All right, everyone. Welcome to an Apokalupsis Historia live this evening. Apparently on the tail end of USA getting their tails handed to them, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about Shakespeare. We're here to talk about Philip Sidney. We're here to talk about a bunch of crazy esoteric nonsense that I've been stumbling upon. And I hope that you have a good time. But otherwise, make sure you check out all the links down below in the description box if you want to come join our private Discord server and book club as we go through all this sort of material that I've been sharing with Chance, and as he sort of actually handed this off to me, as we'll tell the story in a second. If you want to come support us, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Check out all of our essays down below on Substack and all the good stuff. So without further ado, we are going to be talking about Sir Philip Sidney and these crazy stuff that I've been sort of looking into lately, as far as this idea that Chance pitched to me well before we did any YouTube videos. You know, one day on the phone call, we were going through all these Shakespeare candidates. He was kind of like, first into Oxford maybe, and then like, nah, and he was Bacon, definitely not, and kind of just going through it all. And then, one time, he had this like thing that he was like, I think maybe Philip Sidney maybe faked his death, and I was like, sold. Like I'll buy that theory right away.
For a while.
And so one of my favorite videos that we did a long time ago now. I think I've renamed it the Phoenix theory. That's another key word that we're going to be honing in on today. Is not to necessarily say that Sir Philip Sidney has like faked his death and has been re-emerged as Shakespeare or something like that, which is on the table as far as my headcanon goes. But I think I'm actually about to bring in some more bizarre stuff and stuff that cannot be fully explicated, and it's going to involve, honestly, the whole Sidney family. We're talking Mary Sidney, we're talking his brother Robert. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff that I'm going to kind of diving into, and it's kind of piggybacking off a couple other videos that I did, and just bizarre, weird circumstances that have sort of having me pull this thread here. So I guess I'll start off the story where I was doing this. I'm going to share my screen here so that way Chance can share, and so that way also the audience can also see. So let me pull this thing up. And a little while ago I did a video when I was talking about John Dee mainly, and just his sort of place in the conspiracy culture, right? Because John Dee being the famous occultic magician scientist that was working for Queen Elizabeth, and is definitely the private tutor for Sir Philip Sidney. And one of the things that Chance and I have definitely been sort of investigating, and that we kind of contacted or helped contact via other people, John Michael Greer, to kind of do the translation for the horoscope that John Dee wrote for Sir Philip Sidney, which pretty much accurately predicted to the day and time and method and everything about how Sidney was going to, potentially die. And so I did this video where I was just talking about John Dee and conspiracy, and, had a good time just kind of going through this stuff. I talked about this weird, bizarre 1990s PlayStation 1 game that was Japanese only release called The Book of Watermarks. I think that's what the name of it was. But yeah, it was like kind of going through, like, it was, you were actually collecting off Prospero's books. But then somehow through clicking on YouTube that night, and I stayed up like real late. I'm about to show you this video. I stayed up way too late watching this whole damn thing. And I found this game called The Drowned God. And if any of y'all have played Myst, and it even kind of says here, like, I remember my parents playing this game, so I kind of knew what Myst was like. And so this Drowned God game is basically like a click-point adventure game where it's like everything up until 1996 shoved every single thing about conspiracy shoved into this video game. Like, I'm talking like anything, okay? And, when I first kind of get into it, there was like, I don't know, it's got some really good aesthetics. There's like some really good creepy vibes that I was like, all right, this is kind of interesting. And then I kind of forget what exactly, I was like, I'll have the video here, is the video that I was watching. It's like 3 hours long or something insane. Nope, that's the shorter one. That's the one I'll do in a second. Okay, no, this was 5 hours long, okay? So it must have been like 10 o'clock at night when I finally stumbled upon this video, and then, I started seeing things, and I was like, oh no, I've got to watch this whole thing to see if there's anything crazy in here. And at one point, maybe around like, I don't know, like the 2 hour or 3 hour mark or something in here, there was John Dee definitely gets his mention, and it kind of creeped me out because John Dee is also mentioned with the Bullskin House at the same time, which, if anybody know, Aleister Crowley and also Jimmy Page bought this house that's actually on Loch Ness. It's got a sort of infamous history about Aleister Crowley doing all this magic crap there. But, I'm going through this whole thing, and I'm like, yeah, dude, like, wow, it's, like, really on the nose, like, and a lot of stuff is kind of coming, especially coming from, like, 2026. A lot of stuff came full circle in this video game, right? And the video game was made by, or, helmed by this guy named Harry Horse. That's his pen name. His name is Richard Horn, and this guy was, like, a cartoonist or something, and so he was in charge of, like, kind of leading this video game, but then he also dies in this sort of crazy, like, self-suicide, that's what suicide means, murder-suicide, because he killed himself and also killed his wife, apparently, okay? So it was a very just strange production of the game, strange ending to this whole thing, and during this thing, I'm watching this game, this person kind of go through it, and then once again, I'm like super into conspiracy. Like I just know in and outs of like just the whole culture. I know every single meta iceberg. If you want to draw the iceberg for conspiracy, I could probably go to any weird thing that has been brought up. And the only thing that started to really started to like, what the heck was, and I've got it pulled up on the screen here, is that occasionally throughout the game, you'll see there's like a company that has like random objects in the game, and the company's called Arcadia, right? And at certain points, and I have this transcript here, and I guess, so maybe I'll shoot here. This famous painting and does pop up. You're in this house. Oh yeah, this is the creepy part that was really cool. If anyone goes to watch this video, gotta get to this head thing. It's just like this thing named Baphomet, and it just, I don't know, the voice acting is just really cool and like really creepy, and I don't know, this game just was probably made for me in '96, but at this point in this thing, they pull up this painting, this by Nicholas Poussin, and it's called In Arcadia et Ego, right? I too am in Arcadia, and once again, I'm already in Philip Sidney land with Shakespeare, and I'm just like, well, there's some, I know about Arcadia, like I'm in Arcadia too, like, but what does this have to do with conspiracy? I had just never encountered Arcadia in this phrase in conspiracy land. This whole game, 5 hours of gameplay, nothing was new to me. I was like, I know that, like nothing was blowing my mind. It was just a really, really well done artistic rendition of a bunch of conspiracy culture stuff, so that was really intriguing to me, but I just did not expect to see this Arcadia thing. I was like, what the hell is this doing here? And so, yeah, just once again, I just didn't know really how to place it. Like, what's going on here? Like, why is Arcadia here? There's, once again, I'm already privy to a Philip Sidney conspiracy thing, right? And so Philip Sidney famously writing his own version of Arcadia, which is, there was some Italian guy. Who was the name of the Italian guy who wrote the other version of it?
Salazar.
That's right. And so
double check that.
And yeah, I think you're right. And so we got this painting here that's Renaissance painting or whatever, and yeah, they got a couple other Arcadian lines in here, and I was like, what the heck is, I don't know, not that they mentioned Sir Philip Sidney in this thing at all, by the way. Once again, we definitely get some John Dee mentions, because how is John Dee not going to be in a conspiracy game? And I found this other video. It's kind of just a guy talking about the same thing. He's just kind of reviewing the game, but this one I did leave a comment. And I was like, here I am, and I'm like, I'm up to speed with all this conspiracy stuff, except for these Arcadia references. Like, I'm only in here because of Sidney. I only know that because of Sidney. And I was like, what does this line have to do with conspiracy culture? And thank God, this person here, my boy here, Lou Diamond Phillips, he was, he's like, oh, yeah, right. He's like, it comes from this painting here, and he says, and the theory. Oh, well, let me restart it. So he informs me that the phrase is from a painting by Nicholas Poussin, and it in Arcadia Ego, and the theory popularized by the 1982 book The Blood and the Holy Grail, that says it may be a secret location of the Grail. In Greece, in ancient Greece, the Arcadians were also considered the gatekeepers of the mysteries, which I think is where I think Hermes is born in Arcadia, and there's tons of crazy myths in Arcadia, right? I've already talked about the pole star myth. That's where Arcus is the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor pole star, because the little bear's tail is what the pole star is, the one that doesn't, from our perspective, like never moves, right? It just seems to stay still. And that's also the first werewolf, shout out to Eggers, I guess. The first werewolf in Greek myth is a like Lucan or Lucaon, right? Right, from Lycan, right? And so he's one of the kings of Arcadia, and he was the corrupt king. So I was like, yeah, what's this book they're talking about? And the Holy Grail is a thing I'm going to get to in a second.
For viewers' purposes, could you maybe Google Maps real quick where Arcadia is?
We'll do it live.
Like, we'll do it live, Bill O'Reilly style. So yeah, well, and the only reason I want to bring that up is, and I'm sure you've probably mentioned it in previous videos, is just that like I went about this for the longest time not realizing Arcadia is an actual real place. It becomes it's in literature it's become this idyllic, romanticized utopian sort of,
It's like finding Avalon is like a real place or something, which is also gonna be real.
Right, exactly. Okay, so, but yeah, right in Greece, right?
I think that some of the recent modern pagan temples are being rebuilt in Arcadia right now, or whatever official group is calling themselves Greek pagans or whatever, Greek worshippers. They got some.
Right.
I think they have a temple to Pan there, maybe, which is he's definitely associated with that place too. Okay. But great point that it's not some fanciful place, right? It's not just myth. It's a real part of the country, right? And so he told me about this blood in the Holy Grail, and I was like, okay, that sounds kind of interesting, because there was already other stuff I had found that actually connects the Holy Grail to Sidney, and so I was like, yo, like this is perfect. Yeah, what the heck is going on here? And he followed up here. The group Ordo Lapsit Exilis, started by Tracy Twyman and Boyd Rice from Death in June, began publishing a magazine in 1996. The same year, Drowned God came out, called Dagobert's Revenge, to promote the Neo-Arcadian mystique. He also says this probably also has something to do with Neil Gaiman and his dad, David Gaiman, who was head of the Church of Scientology in England. And they published a bunch of other stuff about alien invasion. Oh no, I forgot this part. Alan Moore knows what was going on too. That's why he wrote about the 11 scientists going kidnapped and murdered in The Watchmen in 1986, and now the Trump administration is investigating 11 missing scientists that have something to do with the UFO invasion. So if anyone's been also knowing about these missing scientists that have been popping up everywhere, I talked endlessly about, when Chance and I even did our, book recommendations, right? One of the things we both hyped up was From Hell, right? So yeah, we definitely are Alan Moore fans, and so it's like, I don't know, just like all this like circling crap here, just like freaky.
Sorry, I got to break in. You're already breaking my materialistic sensibilities. Like, I hear the living ghost of John Michael Greer in my ear. Like, yes, Chance, this shit works. It's real. Like, because at some point, like, I know this is stupid to think about, but the number 11 is so important right now because of the dumbass World Cup. Soccer is all 11. Everything in soccer is 11. And so yeah, my apologies for jacking into this, but yeah, that 11 energy, it's real.
Two towers. Obviously 9/11, that sort of angle too.
Yeah.
Right? So it's definitely out there. Two becoming one, or yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So I know if anyone doesn't also know who Tracy Twyman is, that's another very much conspiracy laden name. Okay, so she died kind of mysteriously in 2019, I think is what it was. If anyone knows about the Isaac Cappy thing and the sort of stuff about, just as this Jeffrey Epstein stuff is like really starting to pop on, that's when that's the same year that Epstein's getting arrested, and the same year that I guess for his third time or whatever, but also the same year that he committed suicide, or did not commit a suicide, or take your pick. That's just, it's the same year that all these strange deaths are going on. Maybe it's like also the same year that, maybe it's a little before. What's his name? David Spade's sister, Kate Spade, also dies. There was some Anthony Bourdain. I feel like it's all these kind of people kind of floating around and doing, dying off at the same time.
What was it? Avicii?
Yeah, I don't know if he's 19, but yes, exactly. It's all in that same window. Okay, so Tracy Twyman was a conspiracy research, and I had like listened to one of her interviews or podcasts like some time ago. And I just thought she was like, conspiracy researcher, right? And just got too close to the sun, that, she was kind of one of these liaisons with Isaac Cappy, who Isaac Cappy was like this actor who was fingering a lot of different, not physically, but pointing fingers at a lot of different people that were, Hollywood elite people, saying like these people are bad people, they're doing all this nasty stuff, yada yada yada. Take you know how the story goes, and then she kind of just mysteriously dies or passes away. I kind of and people are like, did someone kill her? Did someone do this? Blah 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 blah. I've got her website pulled up here, and maybe this is not actually what her website used to look like, but it looks like a schizophrenic like thing here, right? Like this is the website that it's got all they're on here. So it's just like an endless scroll of like a lot of this stuff, and so I don't really want to scroll through this too much because I don't really know who's controlling this website anymore. Was Twyman an asset, just like Isaac Cappy, yada yada. So I just don't know. But so that was my takeaway. I was like, oh, she's just a researcher who got too close to the sun. Something bad happened to her, like so many other people or something like they shut him up. I also just at some point, but then I also didn't realize during this part of this investigation how occulty she was, in that she was kind of into doing occult stuff and saying that she was like, summoning Baphomet stuff and blah 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? Like, okay, maybe there's like stuff like this right here. Yeah, she's straight wording some like Freemason stuff here, right? So I was like, I don't really know what I'm getting into here, but this is this is like how I began to find this, and so I found that she hadn't. So like I said, that guy said that she had an article or whatever, and Dagobert's Revenge or something. So I did my best to try to find the article itself. I found a guy who was kind of summarizes maybe some of the stuff here. We can take a look at her actual article that I have found on Archive, I think is what it is. So in this video, the guy is sort of summarizing it, but so there's that phrase again referring to the Poussin Arcadia painting here, right? So we got two shepherds, or maybe these are the two shepherds, or these other two, and there's a chick here, and they're analyzing, this tomb, right? And there's like writing on this tomb. There's another researcher that I've been trying to get on forever, Cord Meyer, and he does a lot of, because I'd kind of connected him a while ago because this other Grail stuff that I'll get to here in a minute, because I'd kind of been like thinking about Sidney and the Grail stuff, and I was like, oh, dude, I'm seeing a lot of overlap between this stuff, and I'd kind of found him, and funny enough, he's another person who I heard on that same podcast that Tracy Twyman had also been interviewed on, right? The Higher Side Chats. If anyone knows anybody from Greg from Higher Side Chats, please, I want him to get me and Chance on so we can do the Shakespeare group theory stuff, because I think all of his Shakespeare guests are a little, one note, for to kind of be precise about what I mean. So kind of going off like, all right, so yeah, I'm trying to hunt down Tracy Twyman's article and say like, what does she have to say about any of this stuff, right? Like what's going on? And so the painting, I'll just start reading this guy's article. This is very short. And the painting always to be noticed by the viewers when someone in the picture is pointing at something. For instance, in the Poussin's painting in Arcadia, also known as blah 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 blah, the Arcadian shepherds, two shepherds point to something written on a tomb. The phrase. The literal translation is odd, because it's literally translated, if you do it kind of in English, it'd be, and in Arcadia, I, right? And in Arcadia, I, ego, I. So this is not a sentence since it lacks a verb. It is thought that some hidden message is conveyed by the painting. Various interpretations exist. One writer, Tracy Twyman, former editor of Dagobert's Revenge magazine, sketches some interpretations with which he does not necessarily agree. One such interpretation is that the phrase is a code word for the underground stream, a network of secret societies and mystery schools which often utilize arcane symbolism in works of art and literature. Okay? And I'll just finish here because it's not very long. The phrase is also associated with tombs. The phrase was inscribed in code on the gravestone of Marie de Blanquefort, whose grave at the church at René de la Chaux, which is heavily tied in with all this Grail stuff and this Ghibelline stuff, we'll get to in a little bit, is believed to have been plundered. That's also what Cord Meyer also is also kind of hunting all the time. It's also thought to mean the tomb of God, and was believed by Henry Lincoln to depict a tomb that, until recently, still existed in the region of René de la Chaux. But according to Twyman, Richard Andrews and Paul Schellenberger, the authors of The Tomb of God, think that the real tomb which Poussin was alluding to is not the one that Henry Lincoln found, but one they say is buried between the twin peaks of nearby Mount Cardew, which they believe to be the tomb of Jesus Christ. Maybe, I don't know. But, so yeah, just kind of, trying to hunt down Tracy's thing. And the whole point is that Arcadia has some weird relation to the Holy Grail and this Rene de la Chateau and the Money Pit as well, which also, the Money Pit also connects back to Shakespeare, honestly, right? We got Peter Moonson? The guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Peter Moonson's documentary connecting the Money Pit and Baconian stuff or whatever. So we're still kind of floating around this sort of nexus of ideas here, no matter what. I think this is her...
That's Oak Island, right? Money Pit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so... the real meaning of in Arcadia Eye and the underground stream, which is what she was talking about, right? That the underground stream is this, hidden network, right? This hidden substrate of stuff, right? So we'll read a little bit here before.
I like that. Like just real quick, the meta-ness of that phrase, like, there's not a better definition of what we're doing right now than being part of the underground stream. We're streaming right now to whoever will watch, and it's so my bad. Continue. Yeah.
No, dude, I love that. Yes, that's actually really, really a perfect play on words there. That definitely needs to be. I'm trying to remember the name of this. Yeah. There's a reason for this underground stream metaphor too, and like why it's a thing. I'm trying to remember the name of this Greek thing. Maybe it'll pop it up because I have it written down until I forget. I'm blanking at the moment. Anyway, so let's just continue here for a second. We got someone in the chat here, Occult Examiner. I like Tracy. Schizo is typical behavior for traumatized or targeted individuals. Great connections. Thank you. Lauren Gallegos. Second that. Thank you. I'm part of that underground, says Contra Charfred. Yes, we are all initiated now. So here, let's read a little more of this because once again, I'm trying to connect Sidney to some of this stuff, and he was already connected via Arcadia. But okay, so this is her publication, right? So in Arcadia Eye, these words may have first appeared in a painting by Il Guercino of the same name. Throughout the Renaissance, this phrase was used as a sort of code word for the underground stream, an invisible college of kindred souls who secretly shared their esoteric knowledge with one another, passing it around Europe via a network of secret societies and mystery schools, often utilizing its arcane symbolism in works of art and literature. Such symbolism shows up, for instance, in the works of René d'Anjou, Giordano Bruno, ding ding, Leonardo da Vinci, Nicholas Poussin, and many others. Yep. The authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, these people here, describe bestly the symbolism of the underground stream. Quote, the motif of an underground stream seems to have been extremely rich in symbolic and allegorical resonances. Among other things, it would appear to connote the underground esoteric tradition of the Pythagorean, Gnostic, Kabbalistic, and Hermetic thought. But it might also connote something more than a general corpus of teachings, perhaps something very specific, some very specific factual information, secret of some sort transmitted in clandestine fashion from generation to generation, and it might connote an unacknowledged and thus subterranean bloodline. So here's another, there was another painting, I guess, that they're referring to. Oh no, I'm going to jack up my very slow web archive. Yeah, here I go. Nuts. All right, let me pull this back up for a second. So the underground stream, the why is Arcadia, what is this referring to actually? There is a Greek myth. I am totally blanking on the name of this dork's name. It's like Alpheus or Alphaeus, I want to say what it is. And so there is maybe it was a shepherd too. So this shepherd dude, he falls in love with a river, one of these river nymphs, and he's trying to get her, and she turns into a river and like is basically like able to get away. And what he does, some other god basically like takes pity on him or helps him out, or maybe he's part god. I'm totally forgetting. I'll pull it up here in a minute. But he turns into he basically goes into the earth and turns into a subterranean stream. Okay, and the stream, so that way he could reunite with her elsewhere. But the stream, or as a spring, essentially pops up in Arcadia. Okay, So that's essentially what, maybe you'll even get to here. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so here's the phrase. The I, as in the last part, ego, is supposed to be death. And since Arcadia is the Greek conception of paradise, it is presumed to mean that death is everywhere, even in paradise. The reason for this is that in the art and literature of the period in which the phrase et in Arcadia ego was used or referenced in some way, it was almost always associated with a tomb of some sort, and usually with a skull as well. As big acknowledgement here as someone. I think Chance and I are people that talk the most about Philip Sidney on YouTube, and I still haven't even fully read Arcadia, so I'm probably even like jumping the gun here, doing this stream. And I haven't even read it all yet.
To be fair, even once you have read all of Arcadia, that's just the old Arcadia. You got to go read the new Arcadia. Once you've read the new Arcadia, you got to go read Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. And then once you've read Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia, maybe you're good in game to read William Alexander's additions to the Arcadia. And then if you like that, you can read Richard Brahms' play, James Shirley's play based on the Arcadia.
And then Tom Stoppard's.
Tom Stoppard's Arcadia, super shout out. There's actually a couple other versions after Shirley and Alexander from like the 1700s, but I've forgotten. They're not important.
Yeah, so here it is. So it's it was not Aeus, but Aeus. Aeus. He's the river god, who I said is embodied by the river of the same name in Greece. Okay, so like most river gods, Alpheus, this is the one that was chasing the other nymph or whatever, and he's the one who turns into the subterranean spring, right? And so for some reason, the Greeks somehow associated this river, which is like far away, with being associated with this spring that's in Arcadia, is I believe what it is. So of course he's a child of Oceanus. According to Pausanias, Alpheus was a passionate hunter and fell in love with the nymph Arethusa. But she fled from him, or maybe Thusa, but she fled from him to the island of Ortygia near Syracuse and metamorphosed her into a well, after which Alpheus became a river, which flowing from the Peloponnese under the sea to Ortygia, where there united its waters with those of the well Arethusa. The well of Arethusa is a symbol of Syracuse. The story is somewhat related differently by the Roman Ovid. She was a beautiful nymph in his story while bathing, and the river Alpheus in Arcadia was surprised and pursued by the river god. But the goddess Artemis took pity on her and changed her into a well, which flowed under the earth to the island of Ortygia. Alpheus took on a water form, jumping into the stream, but the earth opened, and the stream flew underground to appear in a bay near Syracuse, near the island Ortygia, a location sacred to Artemis. So there you go. That's the association with this underground current, essentially, okay?
Okay.
So, once again, Tracy Twyman's argument, I think is, if I'm saying it correctly, is that Hermetic, Giordano Bruno, and Co., and Pythagoras, and blah, 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 that all these people are transmitting, much like how people would even say in modern media that's still kind of going on, that, people incept ideas, or that they're kind of putting it out into the public, and it's almost like its own initiation, right? That if you see the symbols, like, you could maybe join the club or something once you're able to kind of parse it out or whatever,
I like that reading, because that means we get to join the club soon.
Well, yeah, we did it. Everyone here in the chat, you are now part of the underground stream. You already summed it up really well, that this is the underground stream, So, we get an Uranus mention here. What was she also saying though, that all these associations with Arcadia and the Renaissance are always associated with death, and of course our boy here, Philip Sidney, is definitely heavily associated with death. Even Elizabeth Quattrocki Knight, the person who kind of was helping us get in touch somewhat with John Michael Greer, her whole take is that, just using her psychological analysis of Sidney, that, and other people have said the same thing too, is very melancholic, right? There's definitely this depression thing, and maybe when you get that you're going to be predicted to die at some point, it's got to probably have a little bit of weight on your shoulders, like, you know, the most famous magician, you know, freaking Merlin himself, Renaissance Merlin's like, oh, dude, oh my God, I'm doing your chart, dude. And like, yeah, you're going to like, you might die here at age like 31 or whatever, right? But if you live, you'll become super famous. And it's like, oh man, like, okay. So a lot of
Like,
tongue.
yeah, and like the context of that chart is that is given to him for either his 15th or 16th birthday. So, you know, like this is the equivalent of like a bar mitzvah, sweet 16, graduation present, all in one. You know, other people get Lamborghinis. What does rich boy Philip Sidney get? Well, his family don't have as much money as some of their peers, so he gets a John D horoscope. It's one of those things. John D made it for him. He couldn't afford a present. He made him one. But like, no, John D's horoscope went back and looked at all the data from the astrological charts of Philip Sidney's birth and said, okay, let's make a horoscope based on your nativity charts. And yeah, basically said, dude, at age 31, there's going to be a giant battle and you know, things are going to be really tough, but like you'll either get shot in the nuts and die or you will become the most famous human being in our country's history, in the world's history.
And you're joking about getting shot in the nuts, but dude, just getting shot in the nuts or the manhood thing, dude, we're about to just do this over and over and over again, okay? Like it's not even a joke.
It's in like Sidney's poetry. Like Sidney's already writing about that stuff before it happens. So like, you know, whatever you want to make of it. Till bloody bullet catch him wrongful prey. You know what I mean? Like Esther Philistella, Sonnet 20.
Occult Examiner says Lawrence Gardner wrote about Starfire. I don't know who Lawrence Gardner is though.
Okay, check that out.
Yeah, I don't know who it is.
Also, before I forget, I just want to say, you know, this explication of Arcadia, where it's this bizarre, I don't know if it's a realization or an acceptance or what it is, but this noting of death even being in paradise, that's so As You Like It. That's Jacques, man. Everybody asks, why is Jacques in As You Like It? Like, that's why Jacques in As You Like It, right? Jacques is the death in the paradise.
Yeah, dude, you're right. And he's a hunter too, right? That's exactly what he's doing. He's exactly like this Alphaeus character.
Yeah, little Greek, my fucking foot, you know? I'm telling you what, if any of us knew Greek, we would know not to say that. But none of us, we all have as little Greek as they say Shakespeare has.
Exactly. I totally got the name of that researcher wrong, by the way. His name is Court Lindahl, is the one I was talking about.
Court Lindahl.
Like I said, Cord Meyer. Cord Meyer is a dang CIA agent that's associated with a bunch of other CIA stuff that I've been pulling.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it sounded wrong, but I couldn't remember Court's name either. I was like, no, it's Cortland Meyer. I was gonna say that, but no, that's just wrong altogether. But no, I actually shout out to my buddy Robert. He showed me Court Lindahl, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago when we were talking about like history of like Native Americans up in the Northeast and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, you got to check out this guy with his. He's got these videos about John Dee's Newport Towers."
No way.
What the heck?
Yeah, and so, yeah, he knows. He definitely names drop Sidney stuff in here, and a bunch of that stuff. But I don't think he kind of goes into the unpacking that maybe I'm gonna go into in a minute. He definitely is like, oh, the Sidney family is all wrapped up in this stuff, though, right? He definitely is seeing that there's something floating around in here. So I've been trying to hit up on Facebook and be like, hey man, like, you want to come do a thing, man? But you know, no luck. So yeah, y'all go blow him up so I can try to, like, you know, maybe he'll take it seriously.
Yeah, no kidding.
But so continuing on. So yeah, like I said, Twyman's connecting not only just this Holy Grail stuff and all these other ideas to Arcadia. She never name dropped Sidney, but she's definitely going to talk about Bruno and the like. And once again, yeah, Bruno is Giordano Bruno dedicated works to Sidney, right? And they also met, and literally Sidney hosted him, and Sidney, the Sidney clan, or the Sidney faction anyway, hosted Bruno when he was staying in England at the time at the Ash Wednesday talks. And so now kind of maybe, and so now I'll bring it back to some of my original findings. This is actually, I was finding this stuff last year actually, and I've been talking about it at least a chance off air. And let me close some of these links. And so yeah, I'll save this and I'll try to like share other people, because this is a longer article. And yeah, she'll kind of go into all this different stuff, and a lot of good information in here. But yeah, she's just connecting it to the Grail and to Arcadia and all that sort of stuff, right, in the underground stream, blah blah blah. Okay, so jumping here. So when we talk about Sidney, okay, I was reading this book. Last year, and I've been talking about him for a little minute here. I've been talking about Julius Evola. Okay, let me zoom here to the cover. This is a terrible looking cover here, but I was reading a lot of Julius Evola, and he was maybe just happened to be reading at the right time, because I was reading him as I was reading Antony and Cleopatra, and first for a while I was like, dude, Antony and Cleopatra, like, I do not get this play. I do not, well, like, what is this? This is boring. This is like, Antony's like, oh, I love you, and then Cleopatra's like, yeah, I'm a bad bitch, like, yeah, you suck, and like, and then like, oh man, like, you know, I kind of like him, you know, I just like, what is this? And then at that very last line, so I have a whole stream on Evola where I'm reading like the last parts of this play, and I was like, dude, like, all of Evola's imagery is actually in this play. Like, there's one thing where Antony is talking to a guy named Eros, literally, you know, Desire, and kind of lamenting like, oh, dude, like, I screwed up, and like, you know, everything's falling through my fingers, and blah blah blah. Because Antony's whole kind of shtick is that, yeah, he does have this Eros or desire for Cleopatra, but he wants her really bad, and it's like screwing him up. But then he's also like, you know, and he does like her, but he's over liking her too, and he like can't quite kind of figure out how to like properly put this relationship into place, right? And everything falls apart for both of them essentially in the end, right? That they both don't really get what they want. And you got doofuses like Octavius that we're gonna go over and take over, right? Because yeah, I feel like Octavius is also kind of made fun of at the end of Julius Caesar, right? Where Antony is like, you know, where Antony and Julius Caesar is like the big badass, right? He's out there like making things happen. If anything, you know, Chance might have made the reading. Mark Antony is like the machinator in that play in of itself, right? He's the one with the brains.
Absolutely.
And so, I liked Evola a lot. I liked it. Once again, you don't even have to like take Evola's prescription about, you know, what everything's going on, but just like a Jungian thing, like you kind of see them like lay out some pretty some perennial ideas that seem to like, hey, like a lot of this is checking out. It doesn't mean I have to like it or agree with it. It's just other people are employing it, so it doesn't matter what I feel about it. It's just like they're doing it. Other people are doing it, right? It's like you can believe Marxist theory, and essentially, no, economic forces do control and influence a lot of stuff, and disparate, you know, and unequal inequality and economic power is definitely going to have it. Doesn't mean that, all right, let's go, and now let's go storm, you know, with the proletariat. Like, okay, there's a whole difference between like, you know, just analyzing things and then also just taking what they should do with it, essentially, right?
It's just another hermeneutic tool. And it's a really powerful hermeneutic tool to make, specifically for us, like interpretations on Shakespeare, but like it's not just for Shakespeare. Like you can use it in like a self-help way. You can,
Right.
Evola can be used in political spectrum. There's all sorts of ways to use an Evolan lens, and like, I don't know.
If you want a tame version, just go read Jung, because Jung's just going to be a much more tame version of that. It's a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah. It's, you know, Evola gets a bad rap because he gets pushed as, you know, right wing, but like in today's like alt right, you know, mode of thought, like I don't think that like Evola is at all like the alt right. Like Evola is such a old school right. Like it's beyond reactionary. But it none of it's like fascistic or anything. Like you could argue it's fascistic, but like it's just far too traditional. It's far too ensconced in a naturalist setup to be anything like technocratic fascism.
Yes, he would totally denounce it, actually.
He did. He did denounce fascism.
And even
So
like this even technology to a certain degree.
um, real quick, if you don't mind, I'm going to derail you for 1 second. The Italian futurists are like, to me, one of the most fascinating bunches of thinkers ever. Because right around like what 1909, 1910, 1911, all these super talented hot shot, like these guys could paint, they could write, they could play music. They were like just complete polymaths. They all got together and they're like, we need a political outlook, we need a movement, we need an aesthetic political agenda for everything. And they came up with futurism, which was, everything's got to be fast moving, fast paced. It's very similar to Nick Land's accelerationism. Honestly, it's just super pro technocratic. Speed was their big push. But that futurist movement lasted for like a year or two, maybe, and then that splintered into like a million things that became more famous than futurism. Like a bunch of them spun off and just made fascism, like classic Mussolini fascism. Some of them spun off and made surrealism and Dadaism. Some of them very much influenced Cubism, and so like it splintered off in all these different things that were, maybe to our modern eye they all look the same, but back then they were very much not the same. And yeah, Evola was one of those things that split off, but he didn't go in any of the same direction they did. Like they were all like, yeah, forward, 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 and Evola was like, doing gainer backflips, like backward, 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 move forward by going backward. I find him absolutely fascinating for that, and people should check out these futurist paintings. They're really fucking cool. Like I don't know, some of that modern art stuff is stupid, and to be fair, some of this futurist stuff is just kind of blobs on a canvas. But they're really cool. They're really really into color and movements, and it's fun to look at. So yeah, my bad.
No, you're
Back
totally fine. No, it's those are great points to bring up to just kind of round him out as a character, right? Because all these
yeah.
people should be rounded out, and not just be like, oh my God, Nietzsche, he said that God is dead, and it's like, dude, shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah, and like
Um,
to be fair, like, Nietzsche is a boogeyman to so many people, but he's also championed by so many people. Whereas like Evola he's either not known or a boogeyman, like, and then like there's like a small amount of people that do really like Evola, but some of them are crazy, some of them like are those bad, scary, wary stuff, and so it's like it's hard to touch Evola in the modern times, but I think all those bars are starting to come down now, and people are just starting to look at any thinkers for anything. I'm seeing that all over the place. Yeah,
I mean, guilty. Yeah, I'm pulling up Clagus, I'm pulling up Evola, yeah,
yeah,
whoever.
like dude, you're going between Clogus and Evola, like that's crazy.
Yeah, dude, they both have totally polar opposite things to say. Evola's like, screw the Pulaskians, a bunch of hippie weenies, and then Clog is like, nah, dude, like that the Pulaskians had it made. It's
But
funny.
they're both like such reactionaries too, though.
Yeah, it's kind of
Like
true too.
they both are like, whoa, like modernism sucks. And like I find that fascinating. But my bad. Continue.
I read Revolt Against the Modern World, and I was like, dude, this is so good. And so I got a couple of his other books, all right? And I was kind of lucky because the second one I read was this one. This is the better cover, but The Mysteries of the Grail. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's backward on, maybe it's not backward on Chance's screen, but it's definitely going to be backward on YouTube. Mysteries of the Grail, it's the one I got pulled up here. And I devoured this, and I didn't care about the Grail at all before. It's just like, I like Evel, let's just see what he's got to say about some of this stuff, right? Let's see if there's, once again, I'm always like, all right, how do I funnel this into the Shakespeare research, right? And boom, I feel like we really struck gold with this. Not only because, I feel like it really kind of helped open up a reading for something like Antony and Cleopatra for me. But yeah, this, The Mystery of the Holy Grail was Sidney gold, okay? Because this is what really made me excited here. And so I got the book pulled up here on Archive. And, Chance, why don't you go ahead and just, before I do this, why don't we just recap the last little months of Sidney's life, especially, what happens to him and how he dies, essentially, because it's going to be super relevant. And, like, if you want to also tell us the source about where this is all coming from.
So you might know this better than me since you read Duncan Jones's biography, but
Long screen.
yeah, Sidney goes to Europe in 1585 and makes his way up to the Low Countries. He's in Zutphen by 1586. The Battle of Zutphen is what, October 16th, 17th. And, like, you got to remember, back then battles aren't much more than a day. Like, it's not like modern warfare where battles, it's not like the Battle of the Somme or the Battle of the Marne or something where those things would last for, months on end. These battles, took place over a day. He, at some point, is pushing a charge. They're not doing so hot. People are sort of getting mowed down. A dude loses his armor, apparently, and Sidney gives some lesser dude his armor. Because he gives some lesser dude his armor, he, of course, is liable to get shot. He takes a bullet in the thigh. From there, he isn't immediately dead. It's just, back then, bullet wounds could cause infections. Getting them out surgically was tough. Trying to keep things disinfected, pre-antiseptic era, it's super tough. And so, his wound, his wound gets gangrenous. And correct me if I'm wrong, it takes like, what, 3 days?
I feel like it's actually longer. I feel like he's actually suffered for
longer?
a while. Yeah, I feel like if he's wounded in like October, he doesn't die until November or something.
Yeah, no, he dies October 17th. I just may have the Zutphen battle date wrong. Let me double check. I'm so sorry.
But no, you already hit all the right points, right? And so you said that they're in a battle. One of the key things is he takes off his armor.
Sorry. His battle is up on September 22nd, so it's like a month.
Yeah, so it's like agonizing apparently for like 30 something days or close to or something like that, right? Which just seems just totally wild. And that he takes off his armor, and that's what allows him, kind of, so he has his exposed legs. He takes off his cuirass or whatever the piece of armor is, and so that's how he was, potentially able to get wounded, I guess. So he gets shot in the thigh, okay? And he of course, he's died from a bullet wound technically, but he technically dies of gangrene, okay? So he gets a terrible infection and dies, and a lot of this stuff is kind of recorded in letters. But there's also some potentially apocryphic details that were added, potentially. Maybe we could argue this too. So I've got his best buddies, or his childhood friends, his best buddies' biography that he wrote for Sidney, but he didn't write it till decades later, well after Sidney's dead, and well after even the events themselves are also done. And it's not like 5 years later he's like recounting. No, it's like 30 years or way later that this thing is published and written or whatever, right? So by Fulk Greville, okay. So Fulk Greville, who also famously, didn't he say that he was he thought of himself as the master of Shakespeare? I thought he said something.
Johnson.
Yeah. Like, what the heck does that mean? So, and in one of these accounts that Fulk Greville tells us is that so Sidney's taken forever to die, and that in one of these instances, Sidney is has a bottle of water, but he sees some other soldier who's not wounded, is not gonna die, but he's thirsty. So Sidney gives him this water bottle as this your need is greater than thy, or whatever, and kind of gives him this bottle. And, once again, is that just folk, making a folk tale or a folk rumor or something like that? Kind of, hamming up the Sidney legend there and all that kind of stuff too. And it's just like, oh, look at, old Sidney. And as chances also, as we said in that Phoenix Theory video a long time before, that so after Sidney dies as well, his uncle, which he would have inherited his estate probably, Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester, almost makes himself go broke making this big giant funeral, right? This massive procession to, because Sidney was the man, right? Everyone, a lot of great expectations for
and
Sidney.
It was actually it wasn't his uncle as much as his uncle did him and the Queen, but it was mostly Walsingham.
Okay, so his father-in-law.
His father-in-law. Yep.
Who is what's his father-in-law's profession basically?
He's head of the Secret Service.
All right, so
Yeah.
It's just like when you're questioning deaths and spook nature, it's like you gotta give a little bit of points. We're seeing a lot. We're not just like, hey, we think this guy maybe did this, right? It's like no, there's the right modern precedents for understanding those types of setups are already kind of in place for it, right? So we already all covered this stuff, and we've got a whole theory about blah 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 blah. But let's just right now we're just gonna focus on just this whole scene of Sidney dying, and even this water bottle scene. Okay, so once again, he's shot in the leg. It's a poison that's essentially gonna kill him, right? It's the gangrene. He's the removal of the armor. It's the giving of the water bottle, and other things that are gonna kind of happen as well with his sister and brother. Okay, and so reading Evola's Holy Grail thing, and Evola is all about this Ghibelline mystery thing too. So he's kind of saying that these Holy Grail stories with Arthur and stuff, and all these kind of kooky things about knights saying goofy things and doing goofy things, and they appear goofy maybe to a modern person, right? Where they kind of just seem inane, like, oh, why do they do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And even maybe if people are familiar with something like the Green Knight, if you actually read the text, when he's like trying not to kiss the lady or whatever, and just kind of bizarre social situations. And even if you read something like the Mabinogion, it's just kind of bizarre plot structure, right? It's like, and one knight decided to go out hunting, and he ran into another knight, and he slayed him, and then he felt bad, so he had to go marry that dude's wife, and he's like, I'll meet you back here in 3 years. Just like, what the hell is, what is going on?
I remember hating Lamort to Arthur in 9th grade because of all of the things that you're saying. It's like, this isn't poorly written. It's just, what the f*** is going on? Like, how am I supposed to react to this?
Yep. And basically, yeah, we just didn't have a key for understanding the motifs that are kind of going on here. But Elva is going to kind of crack it wide open and kind of show and line up, we got all these sorts of ideas floating around that it's all related to, once again, even the revolt against the modern world is kind of talking about, these empires, or at least these motifs in history, right? That, was something for like him, right? This chivalric knight, okay, which is obviously no longer a thing. The chivalric knight was this, it's like a motif to us now, right? That it's so crystallized at what it is because that there's like this perennial, force, like, this real, platonic force that's like embodying it and actually creating what it is. And that's why we can actually hold knights in our hand, and that, all these structures and blah, 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 blah come about. Essentially is because these certain great times, they've got this understanding about how civilization works, or at least how great civilization works, because there's also great civilizations that are also just kind of like like poo-poo ones, like I don't know how to say it, like the ones that are not like full, maybe they're not fully realized as something, right? But there are certain ones that when they get it right, like boom, like that's it. So to him, like this chivalric knight civilization, this Ghibelline sort of ideas or concepts is like one of these realized things. So that's why all these knights are all about the chivalry and the blah 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 blah, about maintaining their disciplining their eros and their passions, and because it's once again you'll be like, oh, that just sounds like a bunch of patriarchy, but it's like no, like the female actually has like a super important role, right? Because obviously the dude wants to win the girl, and it's always the women that are carrying the grail, right? Like whenever a knight is trying to go get the grail, it's always a woman that's got it. You got to somehow do the right thing to get it from her. She's actually got the power. It says the dudes have to go fetch the power, but the women already have it innately to some degree, you know, like they can't wield it the same way, but they already got the power. And so once there's a proper mixing of male and female energy, we're kind of back to our Jungian terms, right? Oh, if we just balance the animus and anima, blah, 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 you'll get a fully realized, individuated person, right? Same thing, but just less psychobiological terms. More hyperstitional or something like that. But regardless, so yeah, taking those concepts, and he's just going through all these Grail stuffs, and he's like, look at this story of this night, dude, and look at the story of this night, dude, look at the story of this night, dude. And I was like, this is exactly what happened to Sidney, okay? So I've got some of these examples here pulled up. And tell me in the audience if you don't see the exact same thing that I'm seeing here, because he's just going to talk about Percival, he's going to talk about Amfortas, he's going to talk about King Arthur, of course. And it's like all the same thing. They all get stabbed or shot. Well, not stopped. They all get stabbed in the same place. They all either get stabbed in their manhood or their thigh. Like, that's just what it says. And that it's always poisoned, too. So we got our gangrene and we got our poisoned motif happening here all at the same time. So let me see here. I got some of the first ones pulled up here. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, Sidney is shot above the knee at Zutphen, ball shattering the femur. Avila repeatedly identifies the Grail wound as the thigh. So we got right here on this page. Let me zoom it in, page 75 here. Down here at the bottom. So Wolfram, which is some medieval dude who is writing medieval literature. Yeah, so he wrote Parsifal, which people might know Parsifal is going to be also covered again by Wagner, which is also the thing. I think it's the play that Nietzsche was like, "Oh, you suck, dude. You're making this Christian play. You suck, dude," or something like that. I forget. I think it's the one that he didn't like or whatever. So yeah, we got Parsifal here.
The play that broke Nietzsche. Yeah.
And we got so the story here is one of these Arthurian knights, and I also and if. Dear audience, man, we've been bringing up Shakespeare, been bringing up Sidney here, and I'd totally forgotten about this, right? But here's just the basic Wikipedia of this guy named Percival, right? One of these King Arthurian knights, and oh, let's look at this painting, Percival, and an illustration for Sidney Lanier's the boy's King Arthur. So I was like, oh, there we go. Yeah, dude, actually, this is a book that I'd referenced in something, I've talked about wanting to be an author a long time ago, and actually, I've seen this cover, and this is the book that actually had a character. He hollowed out the book and had a bunch of drugs inside of it. So, yeah, it kind of came a full circle here, but I thought it was a pretty cool painting anyway. But, yeah, there's someone named Sidney Lanier. It's like, all right, of course, we know the Sidneys already. We were bringing that up, but, Emilio Lanier Bassano is another sort of famous Shakespeare candidate, too. So, once again, I just think all the words are clustering correctly here. They're constellating correctly here, for lack of a better word. So yeah, we got this. One of these Arthurian knights here. I'll go back to the text here. So Wolfram has betrayed. I'll zoom in here for the audience. Yada yada. Let me see how it looks on my screen. Okay. Wolfram has portrayed in Amfortas the type of the wounded king who awaits the hero who will heal him and to whom he will transmit the mandate of the Grail's kingship. Amfortas' fall is explained in the following way. Choosing as his battle cry, Amor, which is, we're going to go back to this in a second, which does not become humility. He puts himself at the service of Orgelus de Logroy, performing brave deeds characterized by the yearning for love. In one of these adventures, however, he ends up being wounded in his manhood, as Chance joked earlier in his balls, by a poisoned lance. Okay? Thrust by a pagan knight who is certain of being able to conquer the Grail. His opponent is eventually slain, but Amfortas' wound remains and his strength disappears. He can no longer adequately function as the king of the Grail, and therefore the whole kingdom falls into deep state of prostration and desolation. But Amor, which is, I think it would just be love, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what Philip? But Philip, if we just take, people usually truncate that name to nickname to just Phil, which is just Phil. Also going to be love. And also, I believe what is, and so in Philip Sidney's sonnet sequence, Astrophil and Stella, what's Astrophil's cry or whatever? I think it's actually Amor. I think he's got some kind of cry. So boom, we got Sidney actually. Once again, Sidney actually was a knight. He is actually known as Sir Philip Sidney. That's like the highest ranking he technically got, I guess. So we got a knight crying the same thing as Amfortas, getting wounded in the same place, and then in the same kind of wounded, poison ideal as well, right? So boom, here's just the first one that we're going to talk about.
And real quick, just want to note, the wounded in his manhood by a poison lance, like it's also Venus and Adonis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're gonna go there. The boar's tusk, it's the same story.
And a lance is a medieval version of basically what would I argue is a lance is just a medieval version of what other type of weapon?
A spear.
A spear.
Yeah, a spear.
A spear. Yeah. All right. So let's go to my next one here. We got some more people getting wounded in the thighs and the goodies. And when people because you think thigh is not his manhood. That's not the same. Well, the thigh is often associated with being associated with male genitalia. So when we think about in the myth of Dionysus being born, it says that Zeus sewed him into his thigh or whatever. They're basically being like he sewed it into his goodies, his family jewels. Okay, let me skip here to page 86 because we're gonna get another one here.
Thigh is a euphemism for groin, which is a euphemism for genitals. Yeah.
All right, so same thing here. Okay. Anyway, oops. So we're talking about Jacob here. Jacob struggles with the angel and forces him to bless him. He manages to see Elohim face to face and to save his life by fighting against the divine. The angel says to him, "Your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Here we notice a singular analogy between Jacob and Percival, who, despite scorning God, achieves his goal and asserts his election. Likewise, Jacob, by winning, obtains his blessing. I wish to point out an even more enigmatic correspondence. The king of the Grail, who waits to be healed, either limps or is wounded in the thigh. In Jacob's story, Jacob was wounded in the thigh by the angel and limps. When the angel saw that he could not prevail against Jacob, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and Jacob's thigh was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. So yeah, just more of this motif of being injured by the thigh. And last one here, let me get to this, page 94. We talk about actually Percival now, not Amfortas. Okay. Where was it? Okay. I'll start at the bottom of here. Okay. In the Quest de Graal and in La Mort d'Arthur, Nascian is told that his right hand has been smitten by the sword because of his sins. Zoom in a little more. And St. Graal Nascian is healed by a priest who walks barefoot on the sea, as if to symbolize the qualification of Nascian should have experienced in order to wield the sword legitimately. Pelles too unsheaths the sword halfway, but is immediately wounded in the thigh by a lance. He will not heal before the arrival of Galahad, who is the predestined one. And as we recalled earlier, that sometimes the wounded guys are also the ones who are going to give the mandate to the next dude. The next dude is actually the legit dude. This might also be reflected in Sidney's brother. So Sidney's brother, Robert Sidney, actually is knighted, I think, at Zutphen. So he's not a knight until around this battle anyway, okay? And we'll see here a little later on that Robert is definitely going to be inheriting a lot of the Sidney mandate. Not only is he just going to be kind of getting this, this title that his brother basically had, but he's even going to get essentially the property that his brother was also probably going to get at some point too, right? He's going to get all the different, not just the Leicester holding, but also Penhurst, and he's going to get something else too. But I guess I'll wait here in a second because I got those notes ordered elsewhere. But yeah, just to kind of like set that up.
And maybe to a lesser degree as well, Essex.
Yeah, I think
or
so.
Maybe not even lesser degree, but also Essex, yeah, where Sidney gave him his sword.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
exactly, yes.
yeah,
Yep. There's a concept of certain
in
knights
which
giving
Essex
away their
is so
swords.
totally Anakin Skywalker, right? Like not at all related to the fact that my roommate's making me watch Phantom Menace right now. Not at all related, but yeah. Won't go into that.
We'll bring out the Weird Al Yankovic song. Yeah, the the parody version of Don McLean's song. But
People
yes,
up here. Give
the
me 1 second. My room is
huh.
Yep.
So
What's up?
yeah, I can go ahead and mute you for a second. So we have the and so yeah, we have this lingering and unhealing wound that is also this common motif in the Grail, because like I said, so Sidney, he's gonna sit there in agony for some time, at least per the record anyway, as he's essentially got this like bad infection, the poisoned, this unhealing wound, because so many of these knights, they get wounded and sometimes they're like almost like in stasis, almost like a Sleeping Beauty sort of thing or whatever, right? And that they're kind of they're not dead and they're not dying, and they're kind of just sitting around waiting for someone to kind of bring around the cure or bring around the right action to essentially bring them up out of this frozen catonic state, essentially. So I already kind of wrote it in here earlier. It was at page 86 about the Jacob's story. But yeah, the King of the Grail, who waits to be healed, either limps or is wounded in the thigh. And there's a fundamental theme in the Grail cycle that the wounded king is waiting to be healed as well. So that's essentially what happens to King Arthur and this at the end of the story, right? So King Arthur kills Mordred, but King Arthur he's like on his deathbed, and like, but and what essentially they do is they ship him off to Avalon, and that that they're waiting for the king to eventually return. And when King Arthur returns, that's when the kingdom will be set right again, because we're going back to that Evolan concept of chivalry and this idea of man needing to control his passions and all that good stuff. And that when that actually does happen, then boom, you got your civilization back. You got this proper order. Now you got all this like real, I don't know how to say it otherwise, but yeah, some real platonic structure that actually punches out of the ether and actually takes physical form. Occult, this is great. Yeah, thank you. It's tied to the divine right to rule. Yes, absolutely. Yes, exactly. Very much that concept. So we got this undying or lingering unhealing wound, always poisoned in the thigh. Boom, got all that. Now this casting off of the armor. We have I got it. Let me zoom back out here real quick. Let me find do we have bookmarks? Nope. So we also have this idea of what's called the test of pride in the Grail cycle. And there's a couple different knights who have to, put their pride aside for certain things, and and the way that they can only attain the Grail is by properly employing or passing the test of the pride, okay? And as Chance said earlier, that Sidney, during one bit, the reason why he was actually wounded is because he took off his armor. He basically saw some other, some person of like slightly lower birth or slightly lower stature than him, didn't have his armor. Okay, so this guy who's lower than him is going to be riding into battle without armor, and Sidney, being the idealist or whatever, I guess, is like, well, I don't want to let someone lower than me to have to like take more bullets than me, so I'll take off my armor too. And I don't know if maybe he gave it to him. I don't remember if he gives it to him or just takes it off just to kind of acknowledge or recognize that this guy was named, I think it's going to be Sir William Pelham, is the guy who is lower than him, that he decided to go ahead and try to so the Grail thing is it's called a test of pride, and I don't know if this is more prideful, being like, I won't. Maybe at the time it's just like, it'd be kind of, maybe you'd feel some type of way if some guy of higher class than you just can afford better armor than you, so he's just got higher chances of surviving. So maybe that does rub people the wrong way. But maybe it could also be a little tongue in cheek to kind of I don't know, be a little ironic or sarcastic about it, like, oh yeah, my rich boss is gonna go take off his stuff because he feels bad for me, but otherwise, like, it's not someone who's I guess it could reflect on someone's true character that they do care about the people that are of the lower degree than they are. So yeah, it's like a reversed moral. Okay, so Amfortas is wounded by his pride. What page was that? That was page 75. He is wounded by his pride, and that's exactly what gets him wounded, right? And that Amfortas with his amor, which does not become humility, right? That's exactly how Amfortas is actually hurt, is because he is not humble. He does not put aside his pride, where Sidney actually does the opposite. Sidney is like, oh man, my lower dude's got not as good armor as me, so I'll take off my armor. So therefore, Sidney is actually passing the test of pride, and although both of them end up getting wounded in the sense, right? Amfortas, that's his humility, lack of humility his lack of humility does get him wounded. Sidney is passing the test of humility and obviously still wounded anyway. But, in Arcadia at ego anyway, you're going to be we're all in death anyway. So, it's not the point. You're right into battle, you die anyway, right? Because that's the whole point. And so I was talking Chains about, there's this test of pride in the Grail myth, and that sometimes the knights needs to pass this test in order to get the Grail. And that's like a weird reversed moral in the Sidney sense, and that these two knights, the Grail one and Sidney, they both get hurt, but the Grail Knight got hurt because he wasn't humble enough. He didn't pass the test. Sidney does, but it's just like still an interesting parallel between those two, right? So now we got this other one. We got another one called the. I know it's in. Maybe it's not even in this. Oh yeah, well no, maybe it's not in this one. But there's another one called the compassion test. Parsival, and I have here. Where is it? And the story of the Fisher King, and they actually have a scene here with Robert Williams from 1991's Fisher King, and what Percival does, Robin Williams, my bad, so we got this compassion test, which is about asking the right questions sometimes, and also just once again sticking. And so Percival, when he first visits the castle, I think he sees, what does he see? He sees some other knight. Is it Amfortas or some other dude? It says right up here. I'm totally forgetting what it is. But Percival sees, he goes to the Grail, and he sees like another knight dude who is like hurt. I think it's his uncle or something, and he doesn't ask like, "Hey, uncle," or like, "Are you okay?" He kind of is, kind of storms in there or whatever. Kind of is a little haughty. I don't exactly remember, but he doesn't ask this question. He doesn't ask like, "What ails the uncle?" is what he was supposed to say in order to pass this test, and he basically, gets slapped down and has to like, go back to go and do it all over again. So when he does go there the second time, the good news is that the healing, once again, we're talking about all these poisoned wounds and wounds that won't heal unless proper things are done. The good news is that the healing is possible. On Parsival's second visit to the Grail Castle, he asks the question, "Uncle, what is it that ails you?" He receives no answer, no explanation, but Amfortas is healed. Same thing that is summed up here by a Google AI. Okay, so this is once again reflected in Sidney and the water bottle story, right? So Sidney's dying, definitely looking like he's gonna die, I suppose. And yeah, you see some other, lower pedigree guy who's also in need of water, or maybe didn't. Sidney is apparently unprompted, gives him the water bottle, and is like, thy necessity is greater than mine, So once again, all these sort of Grail myths, tests are being passed here, right? With the test of pride and taking off the armor, and also the compassion test, as well as about, knowing, what other people are, just having this like empathy, which is a word I won't dissect here, but having this empathy about other people in pain, essentially, right, is recognizing the the humanity in other people or whatever, right? So those are some of the major focuses all the major parallels that I kind of see as well. So let me see here where I want to take this, because I could go on here forever. One thing now, chance remind me or not, is there any, the Phoenix Nest, is any of that dedicated to Sidney, or is there anything specifically that Phoenix is Sidney? Okay. And what, I've already said this before too, is like, yeah, even if you're dedicating something to something like that, right? That's why I named the first video we did a long time ago, like, I don't know, like 3 years ago now. The Phoenix theory, right? Because what does the whole Phoenix do, right? It dies and then it comes back. It's not called a ghost theory. It's not, any of this other stuff. It's specifically something that dies and then comes back. But you'll kind of see here that the Phoenix is definitely associated with a lot of this Grail myth stuff here as well. So throughout all this book, the Phoenix is a major, major, major symbol in the Grail myth. Okay, so here we quote here. Thus, Virgil too seems to refer to this Rex king when he proclaims the imminent advent of the new golden age of Apollo and of heroes. Thus, Augustus conceived his symbolic filiation from Apollo, the Phoenix, which is found in the figurations of Hadrian and Antoninus. Antoninus, God dang it, Antoninus is in a strict relation to this idea of a resurrection of the primordial age through the Roman Empire. Right? But let's not stop there. We got just on the very next page here. Where's the Phoenix line bit? Yeah, I don't know. This all just kind of speaks to me. Once again, we got Sidney on this deathbed, and you may have missed this chance part, but yeah, this idea that the kings are the wounded kings or the wounded knights. You just have to wait for someone to come help them, and that's even like the end of what's going on with Arthur. Let me relate this back to the Phoenix theory, and especially this idea of empire. The whole point when Arthur dies, but he's not actually dead, right? So Arthur is wounded, and all the ladies, they take him and they sail to Avalon, and they're waiting for him to get better. And so when Arthur gets better, and when he returns to Britain, what's supposed to happen? Boom, you got your king back. Boom, y'all are going to be good to go, right? You got your empire back. You got your divine rights back, okay? But of course, like the wounded king and all this sort of stuff is, this idea of controlling the psyche, and, you're back to your Jungian, balancing your psychic levels, yada, yada. But here we go. This legend, we get an Odin mention here. This legend appears with countless variations during the golden age of Western chivalry and Ghibellinism, and the prophetic excitement caused by the coming of the third Frederick. The legend finds a proper conclusion in the enigmatic formula of the emperor who is both alive and not alive, right? Just like the Arthur thing I just said. His eyes shuts and loses his sight with death, but it survives and will sing among the people. He lives and does not live, one with the sprouting branches and yet standing apart from the new shoots. He lives and does not live. The Sibylline formula encompasses the mystery of medieval civilization at its twilight. The wounded king, the king asleep, the king who has died though appears to be alive, and who is alive though appears to be dead, are equivalent or convergent themes that we will find again in the Grail cycle. And just the idea of, a phoenix, once again, sort of dying and rising again. All right. And yeah, we'll just kind of find, that this phoenix motif is just very, very heavily correlated with all these ideas, right? And, likening or being, connecting Sidney and crew to all this phoenix stuff is just like, once again, we're kind of circling this Grail stuff. We're circling all these supposed perennial ideas that I was already kind of wondering to begin with, right? It would be one thing if, like, maybe we only saw the kind of getting shot in the manhood, and that was kind of it, right? But it's like, nope, everyone else, and maybe that's the whole point. Maybe obviously it's not so far-fetched that everyone in Sidney's time is like, hey, definitely using those motifs for whatever reason. But not only that, but of course, like, there is a cult of Sidney that is definitely perpetuated after this point, right? Because after Sidney dies, it's very much of like, oh, the dang Catholics, they dang killed our boy, you know, like, well, he was the Protestant knight, he was gonna do it, he was gonna be the dude, he was gonna, you know, blah 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 blah, right? This is the exact same motif and archetype that we're sort of discussing here, you know. Let me see if I can find this Phoenix. And kind of opposite maybe in the where Sidney, I feel like, was very much, at least like in this, you know, I've definitely abandoned the earthly woman, right? Because even when we'll find here, when you abandon the earthly woman, you're not just like, you know, a homosexual or something. But it's more of like, no, I've like put my desires in a certain place. Where I feel like Byron is actually more of like, nah, he's a little more of that, you know, bad boy aspect, a little more Dark Knight. And here's another one here a little bit. The water of perennial youth visibly has the meaning of immortality. The incombustible garment is connected to the power of the phoenix to remain unscathed and renew itself in fire. Invisibility, I like this here too, I have some ideas of this. Invisibility is an important symbol of the power to contact the invisible and supersensible dimension and to be able to be transferred to it. There's also a lot of mentions of being invisible, and invisible is a very, very important power too. Not just like in this Grail myth stuff, but he's kind of connecting it back to other primordial entities that, you know, the gods can kind of be invisible, even like the Tuatha De Danann, which is like these pre-Celtic, you know, proto-Mabinogian stuff, pre-Christian ideas, and that, you know, these sort of divine mythic dude hero people they didn't like go away, they like became invisible. And you know, on a mystical level, right? You know, being invisible, yeah, you're in a liminal space, you're in, you know, between both worlds. But once again, if I could just entertain a fake your death scenario, right? If you're becoming invisible, you might also be becoming incognito, anonymous, maybe in a sense, you know. You're renouncing all these worldly stuff, you know, like your titles and like your lands, and becoming something that's, you know, kind of more free. You know, it's like he can actually go anywhere now. He actually doesn't have to kind of report and do court and do this and blah, 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 right? Like, there's actually something freeing about that too, you know? That it's actually not all giving up all this stuff necessarily. Let's see if I got one more good Phoenix mention here that just is like on the nose, you know? Here we go. On this page here, 111, let me see exactly. They're all highlighted in my book, but I can't show y'all the book. I guess I could have multiple books open here, but then my eyes might hurt. Well, this is... God dang, where is it? Oh. Nope. Although the swan thing is also going to be kind of relevant too, actually. There was actually a Night of the Swan, and okay, here we go. First of all, I've already mentioned Evola, quoting here. First of all, I, Evola, have already mentioned the episode of Mordrain, who is taken by the Holy Spirit to an island tower in the middle of the ocean. The island is deserted. Mordrain is exhorted to remain steady in his faith. What ensues is the temptation of a woman, and we learn that it is Lucifer who acts in her. Then comes the trial of a terrible storm, which thunders in flashes of lightning, followed by the apparition of some kind of phoenix, the miraculous bird of Serpolion, which strikes and wounds Mordrain. The latter remains unconscious for 7 days, until, having overcome a new demonic temptation, thanks to the interpretation of one of his dreams, he comes to know about the dynasty predestined to generate the hero of the Grail. I guess that one's not so much about a phoenix, kind kind of dying and rising. It's just literally a phoenix there. Yeah, a lot of mentions of invisibility. Also, I feel like, yeah, I already kind of explained all that, so I won't go through every here. Let me just get to this one real quick about once stricken, I rise again is, once again, this phoenix motif, and that even if Sidney is dead, that everyone does seem to, I hate to, assume this what they're doing, but they're kind of capitalizing on this event anyway, right? Because like I already said, it's a very useful political tool, especially if the hype does work about, creating this ideal night. And even if, even as you've been pointing out, like even when we did the recent thing, maybe we didn't even do a stream on that, but when we were pointing out, who is it? Like Gabriel Harvey, denouncing Nash, right? Or even if it's talking about some other person, like it's always Sidney at the top of their accolade list, right? Like, and no one was better than Sidney, and that's why. And then Sidney, devolved into this, and then down into this, and that's why Nash, like that's why you're like seven rungs down from what Sidney was. Like you can't even see that high up because that's how great Sidney was. So like even all these later writers are definitely always like Sidney, yeah, he was the man, he was the dude, and so. Yeah, it's just like even if Sidney's dead, he's just like he's still alive in this sense of yeah. Wait, here come the Oxfordians. No, he's not. Yeah, here's our video that we did. Yeah, coming up on 3 years ago now. It must be. Yeah, writing like Shakespeare for Dummies and Shakespeare. Philip Sidney's DOP. So good times. All right. Let's see. Last little bit about this. Once stricken, I rise again. Quote. Moreover, the quality. Let me blow this up for the audience real quick. There we go. Okay. So moreover, the quality that makes the revenge, and in general, Peredur's mission impossible, is connected to the test of the sword, and more on which later. In the castle of the old man, Peredur has broken his sword by striking an iron pole, proving to be able to repair it immediately. Probably the pole being this idea of what Evelyn always refers to as like the polar solar tradition, right? That a pole is like a standing up right thing, and much like the pole star, which again we're back to Arcadia again, right? Which is where the myth of the pole star comes from in the Ursa Major and Arcus itself. So with the pole, everything orients around the pole. Much like when you look at the pole star, all the stars seem to orient and rotate around it, right? So the pole star is always going to be associated with this perennial divine right of kings, super civilization structure, whatever, right? And so, yeah, with this guy trying to break the pole, and obviously his sword's going to break because you can't break that. It's just like, it's just so apparent. But after 2 times, at the 3rd test, the sword remains shattered, and the old king says, "You only have 2/3 of the force. You must conquer the last third. When your sword will be whole, no one will be able to compete with you." This deficiency implicitly appears as the cause owing to which Peredur does not ask the question, and thus cannot carry out the task of revenge. These are the 3 degrees of a test that must be characterized by the following formula. Once stricken, I rise up again. This refers to the capability of taking up again and reaffirming in a sacrificial manner, hence eventually a reconnection with the Christian theme, an energy that is broken in one of its material and elementary forms. So yeah, even Sidney being this sacrifice for England, right? Because England ain't nothing at this point still, right? Francis Drake is still not beating the Spanish Armada. The England still just it's not what it's going to be very, very, very soon. And as we've sort of pointed out before, you're telling me that right when England's kind of getting their shit together and started to take over the world, like that's right when their language is kind of getting also elevated and kind of improved. That you're telling me that's when the greatest English writer of all time is actually emerging on the scene, is like right when that's going on. And could just be, multiple, geopolitical and other, worldly factors sort of influencing that. Just a lot more capital flowing in and outward and blah, 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 blah. But once again, Sidney as this sort of like hinge about all this stuff kind of popping off, and that even if like, that the national, I need to find that quote. The national tragedy of his death is a good spurring moment for them all. Yeah. Here it is. Let me go look at this page 122, because that one popped in my head. And yeah, that the necessity or the lamenting of actually feeling the people actually feeling the pain of the death of this of your heroes is actually like a really as a rallying force almost. Right. It must be somewhere right here. To feel, where is it? So, and I still haven't really gotten to much of the Sidney, the rest of the Sidney family. I've just been stuck here, talking about just Philip here the whole time. Where is this quote? Sorry, folks. One sec. Where is it? Oh, man. I don't know. Chance, you have anything to say while I look this up for 2 seconds? To feel the tragedy. Let's see if I can just Control F here real quick. Because, yeah, this, okay. Yeah, it's right here. I guess I should have just read a little harder. Okay, here we go. Anyone who follows the adventurers of the heroes of the Grail up to the famous question being, oh no, I don't think I ever, here we go. The famous question being, one of the big tests in the Grail is that when you get to the Grail, you kind of have to ask this particular question actually to obtain the Grail too. So that's actually what it's referring to here. I'll relate that back to something else here in a second, but here we go. Anyone who follows the adventures of the heroes of the Grail up to the famous question is bound to have the clear and unmistakable feeling that something, all of a sudden, prevents the author from speaking freely, and that a trivial answer is given to conceal the real one. In fact, what really matters is not so much what are the objects according to the Christianized fable or to the ancient Celtic or Nordic legends, but rather to feel the tragedy of the paralyzed or wounded king once one achieves that inner realization, the symbol of which is the vision of the Grail. What matters is to assume the initiative of the absolute action that brings about a restoration. To feel the pain and tragedy of the paralyzed or wounded king, one achieves the inner realization. Once again, isn't that the whole Sidney thing? To like, oh no, our best knight dude is gone. Like, oh, what could have we done? Like, that's exactly what it's like. Almost like they want this recipe for a certain psychological state with this whole thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also can't help but think of just Shakespeare plays, right? Like King Lear, right? The Wounded King. Richard II. Yeah.
I don't know if we know our book club is currently reading or finishing up the first part of Henry VI. And so even like something like Talbot dying, I feel like is a little bit related
Talbot.
to that.
Yep. Yeah. And
yeah.
like, yeah, not just Talbot dying, but like Talbot's always in peril, like throughout the whole fucking story. It's just like they got Talbot again. I mean, he's the best, but somehow they got him again. And it's like, I don't know, like Talbot's like freaking Liam Neeson's daughter. Like, dude, just stay in the house. Like causing more problems than you know.
Oh, that's too funny. I'll just finish up this little passage here because maybe there's more. The miraculously redeeming power that is attributed to the question can be perceived as extravagant only from this perspective. To ask is the equivalent of stating the problem, which is what when I was reading this book and it's talking about the importance of this question you have to ask at the Grail, I was like, dude, this is True Detective Season 1, baby. Like, that's the famous line, right? End of Episode 1, you better start asking the right fucking questions, right? And it's like, yeah, you are stating, it's the equivalent of stating the problem. You got to know, like, the whole context of everything to even begin under it. And, like, that's actually the joke as well of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? They made this giant computer to answer the best problem, and the computer's like, the answer's like 42, right? And the computer's ultimately like, well, you didn't ask me the right question, technically. So they gotta build another computer to like ask it the right question, right? And it's just like, yes. And so yeah, even Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is like hitting upon the same concept. Which is, to all my naysayers, people in conspiracy, like, oh, why do you want to learn this stuff, and what's it gonna do, and what are you gonna do about it, and what are you gonna do about it, Brady? And I've always been like, knowing's half the problem, right? Knowing's half the solution. Just knowing like who is what team and like what is exactly going on, right? Like it's part of the journey itself, rather than just putting all the the responsibility on someone else to solve your problem. It's like, how about we begin figuring out what the problem is,
Right. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, for me, knowing's like way more than half the battle. Like I'm not even a fan of that phrase. Like knowing's like, it's all the battle. Like you can't fight it unless you know it. Like, and like, it's not knowing wins the battle. It's like knowing is half the battle, like you just need to know to be able to fight the battle. And especially when so much is, the more you come on this, like so much of this occult, ideology, so much of this occult symbolism, it's meant to work on the unwittingness. You know what I mean? And so like it's meant to work for those that know on those that don't know. Like that's kind of the whole point. And so it's us looking into this isn't necessarily an acknowledgement that, oh, this stuff is real, it does work, it is for sure, powerful, good stuff. Like, it's not necessarily that. It's just to say that if it does work, like, I don't want to be unwitting about it. And like now, if it either way, it's a good way to hedge your bets, because if it doesn't work, then now you know it doesn't work and you understand why it doesn't work. If it does work, now you know it does work and why it does, and so to shield yourself from that, Yeah, but like I don't know, those are the same people that say postmodernism's big bad boogeyman,
Yep.
and like okay, fine, yeah, it's boogeyman. Go hide. See if you're safe. I don't
He's right there.
know.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yes, exactly. Um, and maybe nearing here the end of all this spiel I got here. Maybe yeah, 'cause yeah, this concept of asking the right question. I love that, not just for conspiracy stuff, but yeah, the famous show that probably put me onto this whole dang thing. Actually, right? That's all I've ever talked about is True Detective season 1, and all that good stuff and all the bizarreness attached to it. But yeah, just this like yeah, the philosophical angle of it as well, or not, ontological. I don't even know, right? Maybe something to that degree, or epistemological.
Yeah.
All right, so with all this kind of wrapping up here, right? So hopefully I've laid it. Yeah, that Sidney is. Whether it was all consciously planned, I'd have no idea. I don't know if Sidney was like, hey, I got this death thing, maybe I should try to like live all this nice stuff, or maybe his whole life was planned for this nice stuff. I have got weird intimations about other things. Recently, this guy named Oliver Tree recently passed away. He was like some YouTube music artist that everyone may know of. But his whole narrative is that so he recently died in like a helicopter crash or something, right? With this other YouTube streamer or something. But the whole narrative is that he had recently just got out of his record deal with whoever, Sony or something like that, some major corporation, and he had just been on YouTube, the week before, been like, I was making all this money for them, and they're just hamstringing me, and blah 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 blah. So now that he's dead, everyone's like, oh look, the record label, the company got him, blah 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 blah. But not only that, but people have been stitching. People are kind of finding, either his older interviews and him having all these kind of like on the nose things about, oh, I may not be here forever, or what if I was gonna die and if I had some message to give, just all the years kind of saying all that stuff. And it's like, once again, as if you knew you were gonna die early. What, did you get your astrology chart too? Like, is that the key to everything? Like, just gotta get a John D to give that to you. And then all of his music videos kind of have this motif of him like falling backwards or whatever, and he literally fell out of the sky. And one of the last music videos he did, there was like 2 helicopters that like crashed or did something too. So it's like, I don't know, it's exactly like a nativity chart. Like, you're gonna die from maybe in a battle, or maybe from a bullet or stab wound, and maybe from a sickness, but you'll be super famous if you don't. So it's just like, is this just the same? It's just the same people recycling the same crap over and over, or is it these people realizing these like webs of fate that they're actually like bound with, and they're just acting on it like really lucidly, as in like Paul Atreides in Dune or something, right? He just is so present in the future. He sees his life from this like third person's perspective or something. He just knows like what happens at certain moments, not even seeing from his first person view, but yeah, from some detached view. I don't really know. I don't really know what's the answer to that, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way, I guess.
Dare I say, Anakin Skywalker?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, dude, yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. So yeah, we got, this Astrophil is Amfortas with the Amor, cry thing, and, or Sidney is Galahad or something like that. The wounded lover servant being able to quench his thirst. Oh, Sonnet 7-1. Desire still cries, give me some food. So, and what's the other thing? Oh, and I also had this other reading of, once again, Sidney gives a cup or gives a water bottle to somebody else, but I'd kind of noticed when we were doing our Hamlet reading for the book club, the very end, that Hamlet seizes the poisoned cup away from his buddy Horatio, right? So Horatio's like, oh, I'm going to go out like a Roman too, and Hamlet's like, nah, give me that. Like, no, you're not going to do that. Because he basically charges Horatio, being like, you got to go on and tell everyone what happened here, right? Just don't just write yourself off like I am, like I'm kind of already like in this, but no, like you can actually go off and kind of help humanity maybe in some sense, and like let everybody know like the circumstances that brought this about. And it's kind of like, a little bit once again with his brother Robert, right? Robert, his younger brother, is going to get his knighthood, he's going to get all the titles, and Robert himself, they'll find actually was his own sort of poet, and that it was actually like, kind of did on the side, very low. He kind of did it much more privately and didn't have it published or anything like that. I think it was actually dedicated to his sister too, and then it was essentially hidden away for a castle for like a long ass time until like the 1800s, until like 200 years later, and eventually they find it and they're like, oh, what is this stuff, right? Where's the rest of this stuff? Yeah, so Robert, knight at the same time. So once again, this mandate of the wounded knight or the wounded king or whoever giving the mandate or giving the proper revenge to the next dude who's actually right there. I'm going to give you my sword. I'm going to give you the charge to take up my mantle or take up my quest or whatever, right? Same sort of thing. He takes the Flushing governorship, inherits Penshurst, eventually becomes our first Earl of Leicester. The wounded brother's function passes intact to the surviving brother. Robert wrote a sonnet sequence in the 1590s, autograph notebook with revisions across years, dedicated for the Countess of Pembroke. Once again, Mary Sidney also being this important woman figure. It's the ladies who take King Arthur to Avalon, who are the ones, like I said earlier, that they are the ones who inherently already have the Grail power. And so Mary Sidney is also very much in this function as well. Finishing his sonnet sequencing stuff, finishing the Psalms, editing his stuff as well. Potentially, also this Wilton Circle or this sort of Sappho sort of type, producer, let alone, very influential writer in the Shakespeare game himself, as per maybe our buddies, David Richardson's theory. That would totally all line up too, right? But Robert's manuscript was sold out of Penshurst in 1848, misattributed at Warwick Castle, identified by P.I. Croft only in the 1960s, early 70s, edited in 84, now in the British Library. It's like a secret poetic corpus kept by the surviving brother of the family, entrusted to the female keeper. And it's like its own like weird little Grail myth itself, and it's like literally hiding in a castle. Like it's like so provocative of this whole concept already, right? Mary once again is the Grail carrier between the two brothers. Mary Sidney Herbert edits all of his stuff. Everything I just mentioned here, I already wrote that. Obviously was also a great chemist, because at the later part of this book, he's going to go all into Rosicrucianism, which is not something I dove into here, and alchemy, and how everything about alchemy and Rosicrucianism is actually just more of this stuff, okay? But I didn't get into it. There's a dude named Rosie, and he's doing all this night stuff, and so that's where this Rosie Cross stuff is actually maybe popping up as well, because it's related to all the Grail stuff as well. We got even Ben Johnson's to Penshurst, which is sort of I was wondering if because it's definitely a thing that's sort of hyping up the Sidneys as being because the Sidneys don't come from this particularly they're not from like a noble bloodline per se. Like if you go back far enough, they're not the king's brother of yada yada yada. They kind of just slowly rose up the ranks, right, and kind of did the right thing and did the right stuff, maybe through meritocracy. But even
at some point, they're Welsh. Like the Sidneys, if we go up through his dad's side, like the Sidneys are Welsh, and so yes, the Tudors also happen to be Welsh. So yes, Queen Elizabeth is technically Welsh, but like that was like this really lucky happenstance thing that Henry Tudor got to become Henry VII. That usually that doesn't happen, and so Welsh people coming into power is a pretty recent thing. That's happening in Henry VII, Henry VIII, and Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth's reigns. So at most of the Welshmen with a ton of power are going to be pretty recent.
Oh my god.
That said, through his mom's family, his mom's family is, his mom is Leicester's sister. His grandfather is John Dudley, Earl of Northumberland, who gets his head cut off for trying to put
Jane Grey on the throne.
But yeah,
And
so
yeah,
they're not.
Jane.
So in this poem, at least, yeah. So yeah, he's just chances confirming, yeah, that they're not of this like Well, the Welsh is actually relevant to maybe this King Arthur myth stuff anyway, right? Because that's where you're gonna get all this Mabinogian literature, which is all
And
this
so yeah,
pre-Arthurian literature.
he is in this weird kind of liminal space though, where through his dad's side, they're not much more than a few generations off, like blue collar Welsh, upbringing. But then on his mom's side, like, yeah, technically his aunt was queen for 9 days. Jane Grey would have been his aunt because she was married to Guilford Dudley, who is Robert's brother, or who is Mary's brother, and Mary's Philip's mom. So yeah, like Lady Jane Grey, the 9 days queen, that's Philip Sidney's aunt. Um, and so yeah, and like Philip himself, who's his godfather, who's his namesake?
His godfather. I don't know. Not
Who's he named
Lester?
after? Huh?
Who?
No. Who's he named after?
Who? Which one?
What's his name?
Dudley?
No, Philip. What's Philip's name?
King of Spain, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so his sister's named after Queen Mary, who was briefly married to, King Philip. Yeah. And like that's also a weird time for England. Like they were, their king was the Spanish king. Like people got to remember that. It's like they're not far off from that in Elizabeth's reign. It's like you said, they're just now coming online fully.
And so, well, here we got Ben Jonson's poem to Penshurst, which is kind of just like a big, lauding of the Sidney family here in a sense, right? And it's kind of just talking about how great it is here, and that his cup's always filled. Literally that there's great hospitality, but there's like some lines that of course that I like a lot. Not when I take my lodging need I pay for fire or lights or livery. All there is, as if all there then were mine, or I reigned here. Just talking about, oh man, they're so nice. They they fatten me up. It's great. I just even like it says, we're penned in, well, here, thou hast thy walks for health as well as sport, thy mount to which the dryads do resort, where Pan and Bacchus their high feasts have made. I don't know, just another Arcadian thing here. Beneath the broad beech and chestnut shade, the taller tree which of nut was set. But let me get to this particular line, this one here. When thou wouldst feast or exercise thy friends, the lower land that to the river bends, thy sheep, thy bullocks, kine, calves you feed, the middle grounds, thy mates, thy mares, horses breed. Each bank doth yield thee conies, and the tops, fertile of wood, Ashore and Sidney's copse, to crown thy open table doth provide the purpled pleasant with the spickled side. But Ashore and Sidney's copse. So I guess the woodland that he's talking about here is on Penshurst top is Ashore, literally Old English for ask, offer, which is a ridge of ash trees. And as we've said over and over and over again, ask, an ash, well, ask in Old English with the funny A-E-S-C-E is the word in Old English for both spear and ash tree, right? So once again, we already talked about Thomas Nash all the time, and kind of questioning him, and we were once again, I've already been talking about this sort of nexus and clustering of word associations, no matter what. Just something about being Nash and ash being related to spears. If we didn't already make that heavily clear with something like William Shakespeare, just sort of being on the nose. So once again, it's just like I've got a joke like, Shakespeare just has like the most charged and marketable name ever, or maybe he just knows at the same time, but it's got all this nice oomph to it the whole time. But not only that, the same root of this gives the Kentish royal family dynasty its names. Literally, Ask and Oisk, son or grandson of Hengist, eponym of the Osingas, who ruled Kent from 48 until the line died out in the early 8th and 9th century. Sidney being born in Kent. The etymology is contested between ash spear and god as well. Literally, Osir and Os in Old Norse, right? But yeah, it's just kind of just not. I just like how this could just be once again one of its known geographical features here. But it's kind of nice to see, for my conspiracy mind to kind of see it brought up here with the Sidney family, because I've just been seeing all these sort of clusters here anyway. The Sidneys are not from Penshurst. They got a hold of it, but Johnson's here's being like, dude, they might as well have been here the whole time, right? Because I think they planted these Sidney's cops like on next to it or something like that. I kind of forget the order. I think that's I know these were here before, but I think that's what these are here for a little later on, is something that they're essentially, hey, we're planting our roots here too. Like, we're just as embedded here now as everything that was before here.
Mm-hmm.
So, is Sidney part of this underground stream? Is he part of this, Pythagorean, Giordano-Brunian, esoteric transmission of knowledge or whatever? Is it part of this Evolan? Is it just are the Sidney faction and all these people just taking advantage of these motifs? So they just this is their version of knowing what Jung is, like, collective unconscious or blah 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 yada yada. They just it's just a whole nother vernacular, but for the same sort of processes, like no matter what.
Right. Like, at some point, like, I think it's yes to all the above, because like surely Sidney and his literary buddies want to put their own spin on things, but surely they're in communication either directly or indirectly with continental peers. Like we know Bruno, right? Bruno comes to England and visits Oxford and hangs out with Sidney, dedicates a couple works to Sidney. Seems like Shakespeare seems to be saying something about Bruno with Love's Labour's Lost and the Brown character. Sidney's the one that's bringing a lot of the French poetry from the Pleiades. He's bringing over Ronsard. He's bringing over Dumornay, Debarthus, probably forgetting a few others.
Obviously plugged in with Languette, whatever he's plugged into too.
Right. Sidney's like writing letters to people like Ramus, who's one of the top thinkers in the art of memory in his era, who's diabolically opposed to Bruno. Sidney's somehow like buddies with both. Sidney's like writing letters to Justus Lipsius. He's following thinkers like Mellenbranch and sorry, not Mellenbranch, Melanchthon. Mellenbranch, that's good.
He's getting dedicated by Henry Estienne, the Greek scholar. He's getting and being told by this Greek scholar, like, yo, dude, this is gonna be like the greatest Greek translator dude ever. Y'all just wait for this guy.
Scholar, like Estienne is like the most famous Plato scholar ever. Like whenever you like read Plato and they got the numbers next to like the paragraphs, those are called Estienne numbers, or Stephanian numbers, because that's what Estienne means in French.
Right.
And so like we're sitting here like, wow, all this Plato and Aeschylus seems to be popping up in Shakespeare, and Shakespeare doesn't know Greek, I guess. But then, we have Henry Estienne's like, Philip Sidney is the greatest Greek mind of our era. Like there's too much a divide there. We don't have to immediately jump to Philip Sidney is Shakespeare, but like there's a divide there, and you got to close that gap, guys. Like, you really got to close that gap somehow. And it might help going towards Sidney to try and close that gap.
I think you said something really good there too, where you're like, oh, he's friends with Bruno, but Bruno's enemy is Ramus at the same time, and I feel like there was something else. There was another good dichotomy of friendships that he he was able to hold this tension between these ideas, right? And that's what we've been discussing so much about Shakespeare, is that Shakespeare's not totally denouncing Protestants, he's not totally denouncing Catholics. He seems to kind of hold out a little bit for both sides. He seems to have this tension that he's able to hold without. He can accept both, or he can acknowledge both ideas without either accepting them, right? That sort of idea of, Aristotelian idea of an educated mind or something,
We could probably point out this in any Shakespeare play, but the one that I always think of with this is Julius Caesar. I still don't know where I want to land with how Shakespeare wants us to feel about, the characters in Julius Caesar. Because you can very, very easily make this into Brutus is the tragic hero. That, if Brutus hadn't died, if Brutus could have pulled this off, the Republic would have been saved, right? And and maybe even some of that tragic hero stuff isn't even this Greek commercial stuff. It's more, modern social issues that Brutus is just too much up against all these different social, um, forces that are too much to combat as one man, and so you can totally make that reading if you want. And in that sense, Shakespeare's a total Republican, not like modern sense in American politics, but in the Machiavellian sense of a small, almost oligarchical, aristocratic type Republican form of democracy is the best way to run things, and that when we let the masses, the Leviathan, the Hobbesian Leviathan, come out, it totally just throws all this crap into chaos, and it's its own form of tyranny, and it's always coupled with some tyrannous person taking over, kind of thing. But on the flip side, so much of me wants to make a reading almost the opposite, that Shakespeare really is pointing to that Brutus isn't capable of that. You got to be better than Brutus to keep a republic going. That there's people like Mark Antony out there.
I mean, the name
Elon
Brutus
Musk, or
itself
whatever.
just seems on the nose,
Right. And and it's that's even mythologically baked in and historically baked into the Brutus character, since his great 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 grandpappy was the guy that got rid of, the evil tyrannous king back in the day. That's why one of the senators in Coriolanus is named Brutus, right?
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, Antony, if Antony gets the win at the end, and so many of the tragedies of Shakespeare's era don't end in total darkness, especially the '90s tragedies. Like Richard III is not total darkness. It's it's so dark, it's so dark, and then Henry VII comes in, and this cool spring rain washes over everything, and it's like the end of Lion King, right? The fire is out, the steam's rising, and then a few cutscenes later, and we're on top of a mountain, monkeys holding a lion, we're all screaming African chants, and everything's glorious, right? You get that, you don't quite get that in Romeo and Juliet, but I think there is this sensibility that you can shit. The Shakespeare in the Park right now in New York City has turned Romeo and Juliet into a comedy. So
Yeah.
I don't think to argue that too hard, right? The they're but once we get to Macbeth or King Lear or even Hamlet or Othello, is there any sense of resolve at the end? Is there any rain washing the fire away? I would like to argue that all four of those plays just end in nihilistic darkness, right? And I feel like Caesar's the first time that that's allowed to happen in Shakespeare, where we're allowed to end nihilistically in darkness. But like that's once again if you're making any sort of sympathetic reading to Brutus, right? Like if you're at all rooting for Brutus, that ending is just nihilism, right? And so like I'm open to it. I'm a nihilist. I'm cool with it. But like I'm also just wondering, like, is there some actual like sympathy that's supposed to be had for Antony? Because I don't know. I watched a recent version with my buddy Ian, and they had it so politicized that literally Caesar looked like Donald Trump, and the Antony like literally looked like JD Vance. And so like my buddy Ian's, not of that political affiliation, maybe understandably, and he's immediately like, I hate this Antony. Antony was like to him Darth Vader, and like I just got to think there's other people that maybe in a different version would see Antony as like the opposite. He is just like, I don't know, like Thomas Crown, Steve McQueen, or let me think of something more modern for people under the age of 65. Like just total Brad Pitt badass, just comes in and gets what he wants done, says the right things. He's able to manipulate people how he wants without having to even like dissimulate. He's able to like be earnest and manipulate people, and like that's what Evola's talking about, right? Like that's what you got to do. But like to fully round it out, there is something a little disconcerting about Antony and Cleopatra if you think of it as a direct sequel to Julius Caesar, right? Like how much of a badass Antony was, and then all of a sudden, because he's got a girlfriend, he is just like it's a shell of himself, right? And so like I personally like to just like maybe in my own head canon, I'm like, nah, maybe these are just by like different hands altogether or something, because like it's such a different characterization of Antony. um he's so I don't know,
He's
there's
just
this.
there's no political savviness at all. It's all out the window. That the Antony and Julius Caesar, he is just like a surgeon. He just like knows exactly what. Even if you want to take the very beginning of the play, where he's watching all that stuff go down, right? With or he's the one presenting, or you're like, oh, you want the crown, or you want the crown, Caesar, and Caesar's like, oh no, I don't want the crown. But Mark Antony's the one kind of like doing it, but Mark Antony knows that there's a crowd watching. He knows that these senators are watching. He knows that they're gonna have a bad reaction to him doing that. But their eyes are on Caesar. They're not on Mark Antony, because Mark Antony doesn't have the power right now, right? So no, he seems to be the most Machiavellian in that play. But yeah, like you said, that he gets a girlfriend, and then he just totally becomes like a big weenie, like to some degree. That's just he's totally blinded after that. So, but once again, we talk about is the Shakespeare canon a thing? So should we be associating these characters, or should they just be total new stand-ins or something like that? It's a very good question about how to pair that stuff up.
Right. Because like I don't know, even if they are by different hands, there had to be some assumption by the authors that they're penning this play after Julius Caesar. Even if you want to take the date back several years, it's probably still after Julius Caesar. And like there's got to be some association between the characters, right? Like Sir John Oldcastle is supposed to be not at all by Shakespeare, but clearly Falstaff haunts that play. And so like even if it is by different hands, like one would think Antony would still haunt that play, that those authors would still play on those expectations. And so like maybe it's not wrong to make the reading of the sequel even if it doesn't fit, because maybe that's what those authors are trying to say. Maybe they're trying to cut against that, or maybe it's trying to portray like this is way later in time, right? This is this isn't young hotshot Antony. This is Antony that's not hungry anymore. This is Antony that's pretty much gotten everything he wanted,
Yeah.
This is Rocky 4. This isn't Rocky 1.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Zeralath, buddy
No, sorry,
says,
no, that's Rocky 3. Rocky 4 is, Rocky 3 is that narrative. He's gotten everything he wanted, so he saw.
Zeralath says Trump may be Vespasian.
Okay.
I always think that Trump is Pisistratus. Pisistratus is the he's the Greek tyrant of Athens who first what did he first do? First he pretended that, he pretended supposedly that his enemies tried to assassinate him in public, and he went out in public, and he's like, look, I got blood, look, they tried to kill me, and like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh.
It's like, it's kind of, and then that didn't work, and so, yeah, he, what did he do? The other famous thing is, yeah, he rounded up all the hypercreoi, or basically the mountain dwellers, literally is what they're called, hill dwellers, like, he rounded up all the hillbillies, like, literally the most disposed people, like, the most destitute people in the area, and basically, yeah, use the manpower to overtake Athens. It's like, you mean how he won Trump won the Appalachian vote, that kind of thing, It kind of reminds me of.
That's wild. That's good. That's good.
But I think that might be a good point for us, because I know we will talk about Shakespeare the rest of the night. And if y'all want to talk about Shakespeare with us, y'all should definitely check out the links in the description. Just $9 a month, and y'all can come join the book club, and we will entertain you with Shakespeare the rest of your life.
Yeah,
so
we'll kind of. You may be sorry. I'm kidding. But yeah, I'm super glad you pulled this up, because we've been sitting on Sidney for a while, and we haven't been bringing him up as much in topic of conversation, because I think we partly hit this wall where it was like the people that were interested in Sidney, were definitely interested in Sidney. A lot of people weren't, because Oxfordian leanings, or but like even the ones that were interested in Sidney, they're like, yeah, but what about the death date? What about the death date? What about the death date? And it's like, I feel like you and I have actually dug up a bunch of stuff to make it not so obvious that history went exactly as we say it did. Just the idea that this Merlin type figure, this John Dee, literally predicted his death accurately. Anytime I brought that up with people, they're like, well, John Dee's a con artist, and that stuff is totally misdated and just totally after the fact con artistry stuff. But every scholar that's ever looked at that horoscope dates it to Sidney's either 15th or 16th birthday, so either 69 or 70. And John Michael Greer, who's working on the translation and basically finished, says the exact same thing, and there's good reasons to say those things. So that is real. It's a real thing that you have to contend with, and you have to either admit that John Dee knew the future, or that something's amiss, right? John Michael Greer is someone who heavily believes in John Dee's ability to predict the future, and a big believer in the powers and abilities of these mage figures, is what I would call them. And so for him, it's not some mystery, but I think for a lot of us that are materialists, or modern thinkers in that sense, that aren't as attuned to ideas about magic, like, there's no easy explanation. So yeah, it's a wall. It's like, I can keep bringing this stuff up, and I can keep making people skeptical, but I don't have some way over that wall right now. I'm not the historical document digging kind of guy. I'm not David Richardson. I'm not Bonner Cutting. I don't know how to go into the documentary record like they do and go find something that throws light on all this. Because at some point, I mean, let's go back to Sidney for a second. It takes a month for him to die from the wound, but after that, it takes months for his body to get back to England, and then it takes
even more weeks for his funeral to happen. And as we mentioned, his funeral was the most extravagant funeral in England's history up to that point, nearly bankrupting the head of the Secret Service. The Queen and the Earl of Leicester also threw in a ton of money for that funeral. And people have pointed out that this is a wag the dog event, which is to say it's hey, look over here, don't look over here, look over here. And the don't look over here is that, yeah, they just beheaded Mary of Scots, which, people are like, oh, well, she was a bad lady. Everybody hated her, so she had to die. Why would anybody be mad about that? And it's like, you got to remember, like, Scotland's not just some scrub colonial party that they can just go crap on. Scotland's not Ireland. Scotland's not Wales. Scotland literally, Mary's own daughter or own son becomes the next king.
Yeah.
So, like, this is incredibly tense political issue. Yeah, it is Walsingham himself that uncovers all the Mary Scott's plot and gets her in trouble, and is the one that gets her punished. And he's also the same one paying for this wag the dog event after the beheading. Like, it's the same guy. So like
it's a
we
nice
have
little,
a political
nail in the coffin for some Catholic arguments or something like that, right?
Yeah, they get to absolutely, like, put this Protestant figure up on a shrine while, killing the evil Catholic queen. And like, they get to also get rid of some Catholic leaning noblemen who were part of this Rodolphi plot that got Mary of Scots beheaded. And so, like, the whole thing is a political event. Whether or not you want to say that that's enough to question the funeral and the validity of Sidney and blah, blah, blah. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, shoot, you've brought up enough. That's enough for me to be skeptical of. Okay, so where does Sidney go? What happens from there? And that's the wall, right? Way back when we pitched Samuel Daniel, for some people that might be satisfactory. For me, it's only kind of half satisfactory, because, like, at some point, Daniel's got talent, but, like, Daniel's no Sidney. And so it's like, if I want to say Samuel Daniel is Sidney, then I have to say, like, Sidney got worse at writing, in a sense. So that's, like, it's not super satisfactory. We could say that Samuel Daniel is just Sidney's crummy translation exercises that, even Sidney, when he's doing crummy translation exercises, they're suddenly good enough to, publish. Anybody else's best stuff doesn't even reach Sidney's translation exercises, which becomes Samuel Daniel's best stuff. Like, maybe that's possible. But yeah, from there, you'd have to start figuring out, like, how nobody knows that Samuel Daniel's not Samuel Daniel, because Samuel Daniel does seem to be a real person. So it would have to be a case of, like, Sidney taking his identity. So, like, did they have Samuel Daniel killed? Like, where do we go from there? Do I want to go down that road? I don't know. So it's like, okay, if he's not Samuel Daniel, Oxfordians have tried to pitch that Oxford is Nash. Maybe there's some weird stuff, and we can say that Nash is some sort of pen name being picked up, like you say, a play on the Ash name. But all the people that I know that look really hard into Nash, and these are people that want to prove that Nash is Oxford. Like, they go into this looking at Nash, trying to prove that Nash is Oxford. They, like, come out of it and they're like, Nash seems like a real guy. Like, his death is fucking weird, but, like, everything that he does up to, the Isle of Dogs, up to 1597, seems to make sense and plays into the biography that we know about him. So I don't know, but then there's also Christopher Marlowe, where Christopher Marlowe's writing stuff that
theoretically, we should expect someone like Philip Sidney to write, like Massacre of Paris.
Yep. Yep.
That said, like the version of Massacre of Paris that we have is so like bootlegged that it's like it's hard to argue that the author of that had to have been in Paris. But still, at the same time, that there are ideas in Marlowe that one can see in Philip Sidney. And so, like, yeah, it's hard to say. Like, okay, maybe we shouldn't even see Philip Sidney outside of Shakespeare. You know, maybe I don't need to go find him as Daniel or Nash or somebody else. Maybe he just only pops up in Shakespeare, and that's completely possible. But yeah, that opens it back to my end of things, where it's like that's a stylometric question, or a stylistic question, and that's not super easy to do because all of Sidney's stuff is presumably a decade older than Shakespeare, so there's going to be some stylistic drift over that time. Sidney's not working exactly in the same format as Shakespeare with much of his stuff other than the sonnets, and so that's going to be hard to map that. But it does seem clear that Shakespeare is so wholly influenced by Sidney that we do have to kind of pinpoint this. Whether it's the Stratford man Nash or Mary Sidney or Edward de Vere or whoever, we have to kind of map this. And, um, part of me thinks that when Nash is talking about Mary Sidney keeping Philip Sidney's works locked up in a chest, going back to the Grail keeping thing, that maybe that is talking about Shakespeare. Maybe that is talking about early versions of plays or poems, right? The same way that Oxfordians pitched that Oxford wrote some or all of the plays earlier, right? Or the way that Dennis McCarthy pitches that Stratford's picking it up from North. Perhaps the actual, if we want to pitch some original older author, it is Philip, and that Grail gets passed through Mary, and that is the legend or lore that is being built here. But why all the death prediction stuff if he is just going to die? Why all the hype? Because at some point, I don't think that Robert Sidney is Shakespeare. I think that a bunch of Shakespeare is about Robert Sidney, but I don't necessarily think that Robert is the one picking up and becoming the next heir or prince figure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and so that's where David comes in with Mary. Other people might have other ideas, like Bacon. We know Bacon is connected to Sidney. Bacon and Sidney both served in Parliament together in the early '80s. Bacon's really close with Leicester as well. He's coming up through the Leicester circle.
We found that one woodcut a while ago that's like, I don't remember who likened him, but they were like, oh yeah, Bacon and Sidney, they're the Demosthenes and Cicero or whatever, right?
Yeah. Bacon's the Demosthenes, Sidney the Cicero.
When I was looking at this earlier, because I was like, oh, Brady, that's a stretch, and don't do that. Because, when I was reading the Twyman thing earlier about how there's always a skull associated with this Arcadia thing, and I was like, oh, they mentioned this other painting or whatever, right? I got pulled up on the share screen. But it even says here that the painting shows two young shepherds staring at a skull with a mouse and a blowfly placed on a sippus with the words, "Et in Arcadia ego." Suggested that Virgil's talking about that is referring to the dead shepherd within the tomb rather than death itself. But I was just kind of looking at it. I was like, what kind of scene does it remind you of? Like two dudes.
What, Hamlet?
Yeah, right? That's exactly what I was like. Oh, there's a skull in Hamlet. Right? He's literally talking to a skull. And I was like, yeah, it's almost like Hamlet and Horatio. And he's literally talking to poor Yorick here. I don't know, it's like the exact scene, and this is still apparently painted afterwards. But it may, I feel like the dating of it is a little wonky, because yeah, they misattributed to some dude for a while. But yeah, I was just like, damn, it's kind of the same scene to me.
Yeah. And this device of the skull, it's called a memento mori, and Webster uses it big time. Like all of Webster's tragedies have the memento mori motif in there somewhere, where somebody's got a skull. And in fact, I think in the White Devil, the main girl character, um, her new whoever's now in charge of her, I forget how it goes. But they like drink out of her dead dad's skull.
Yeah,
So
Scythian
they're like,
shit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is definitely blowing my mind about As You Like It. It's a whole new turn on the darkness.
Yeah.
It's yeah, tragic comedy
You
and
get the
full.
clown and the shepherd in the same eventually this together, you know, too.
Right. Like at some point, I think so. A lot of people get hung up on Sidney because Sidney like shits all over tragic comedy. Like Sidney absolutely craps all over mixed genre stuff, right? And defensive poetry, right? And Oxfordians are so quick to be like, "Oh, Shakespeare loved mixing genres, and therefore, Sidney can't be Shakespeare." Blah blah. And
Oh,
um, it seems to me that Sidney is like it. It's stupid to say Sidney doesn't like tragic comedy because Arcadia is a gigantic tragicomic novel. There's no other way to describe Arcadia other than tragic comedy. Um, and so like, but at some point, Sidney's you know complaints against other extant tragicomedy, none of those complaints are he doesn't break his own rules. He follows his own rules. He finds a deeper way of bringing in the tragic into the comic and vice versa. It's not just this mixing of scenes. There's actual an underlying thread in there. And so like, yeah, not saying Sidney wrote As You Like It, but Shakespeare's doing that very same thing. Shakespeare's finding an actual way to make As You Like It tragicomic. It's not just this stupid, I'm going to shove crap in here. There's an actual thematic underpinning.
this is one of the thing on that article about in this painting because it doesn't say on the other one. I feel like so this is from Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I think this is even when you first meet the judge. Then about the meridian of that day, we came upon the judge on his rock there in the wilderness by his single self. Aye, and there was no rock, just the one. Irving said he had brung it with him. I said that it was a mirror stone for him to mark out of nothing at all. He had with him that self-same rifle you see with him now, all mounted in German silver, and the name that he had given it set with silver wire under the check piece in Latin. Et in Arcadia ego. I did not know that. I did not remember that being in Blood Meridian at all. So if we got any right conscious brothers in here, god dang. Underground current, underground stream through Cormac McCarthy, I suppose. I also realized just the other day, apparently, I already told you this off stream too, but at the very beginning of this novel, the kid does apparently go to Galveston.
Yeah. Well, and oh, what the fuck? Excuse my language, but I'm like flipping trying to find the quote that you said. And I'm like, well, I didn't find the quote. Let me put it back. And as I'm thinking that, I found this. As they started up the stairs, the clerk at the desk leaned and called to them, Toadvine. He stopped and looked back. He'll shoot you. Old Sidney?
Oh, God.
Old Sidney. Then he went up the stairs.
Yep. Yeah, dude, Sidney talking through the ether itself, man. Yeah, the word clustering, the weird chances. I use that all
Well, and
very deliberately.
I just wanted to, like, you know, if there is some underground stream and these people do know, you know, Cormac McCarthy's most recent novel, what's it called?
The Passenger, or Stella Maris. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Stella Maris.
Yep.
Stella as in Astrophil and Stella, Maris as in Mary, whom
Stella Maris is in
very much
Polestar too.
part. Yeah, Polestar, going back to the Evolan orientation. But yeah, I wanted to also bring it back to our boy. I don't know if you ever see that.
Tom Stoppard.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just saying that Byron is super Sidneyan like. Well, this whole play is about an authorship question about a poem that a guy wants to say it's got to be Lord Byron's. It's got to be Lord Byron's, and a lot of people do think it is Lord Byron's, and he's trying to like prove that it is Lord Byron's, and like the play jumps between the present where we get this researcher on an authorship question, and then in the past it's actual Byron's time, but like the main character is the actual poet that writes it, and it's not Byron. It's some other guy that is kind of friends with Byron, um, who's just this super smart guy and really good at writing. Um, but I can't help but wonder if that play, at some point in Stoppard's head, was a Shakespeare authorship question play. Because not too long after this, he writes Shakespeare in Love. And yeah, just the main family house is called the Sidley House.
Oh yeah, that's
in
right.
Arcadia. And so like it being called Arcadia, it having the Byron figure, it being called Sidley, like there's something in me that's like, nah, there is something actually being said about Sidney in this play.
Yep. I agree with
And
you.
then yeah, for him to go and make Shakespeare in Love, which as David has pointed out, Shakespeare in Love like just completely fits in with a Mary Sidney a Shakespeare reading. If you just allow for the Gwyneth Paltrow character to be partly or the author of Shakespeare, because yeah, the Colin Firth Wessex character pretty clearly looks like, you know, Herbert, and that Gwyneth Paltrow is clearly Mary Sidney, like she looks like Mary Sidney, and so yeah, like it, and like it surely Stoppard is reading his Sidney at some point, right? So you know, and we've pointed out Dickens before too. I just think that there's some of these authors that they get so, or like Raymond Chandler, right, with Philip Marlowe, right? And what does Philip Marlowe do? Philip Marlowe reads Shakespeare. Like that's all he does is he plays chess and reads Shakespeare.
And I was gonna say, you know, because I was talking about
And
the
solve
Evolan.
mysteries.
I was gonna talk about the Evelyn, you know, his crystallization of the knights. You know, this is like this period in time, how it's like this, you know, chivalric thing. But what better representation in the 21st century of the knight is not the detective? You know, like they got their own code. They're often resisting all these femme fatales, all these sort of like, you know, lusty things. They're fighting corruptness. You know, the gun is basically, you know, the modern sword, for lack of a better word. Like you can draw it still like a sword, and it relates back to True Detective all over again as well. And yeah, all those sorts of things happening. So yeah, dude.
It's why Batman works so much better than all other superhero
Yes,
IP.
world's greatest detective, right?
Yeah, because at some point, like maybe like Daredevil's detective. I'm trying to think what other superhero IP either traditionally or currently follows the detective model. Like yeah, Jessica Jones, which is a knockoff of Daredevil.
The John Constantine.
Yeah, but yeah, for the most part, all the Avengers. That's a football match. That's military training. That's jarhead bullcrap. There's no mystery. There's no detective work. No uncovering. No revealing.
Or the only
And
thing
you
that
know,
they were
I
able to do was something like Wolverine, who kind of had a mysterious past and blah 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 blah. And he was my only other favorite comic book character I really liked a lot. But now they've kind of beaten him to death, pun intended for
Yeah,
his...
no, but you are right that like in all the early Hugh Jackman Wolverine stuff, there was always this like self detective where he's like Oedipus style having to uncover his past.
Yeah.
Um yeah, no, you're totally right. Yeah, that's like the basis of the solo Wolverine Origins movie, right?
Pretty much.
Um but yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Um and it's fitting that we are looking at detectives the same way that like Spencer and Sidney were looking at knights. Like it's still technically a thing, right? Like there are still private eyes out there, right? But it is not the norm or paradigm it was a century previous. And so like there are still aristocratic knights and stuff with Sidney and Spencer's era. Like it's still technically a thing. They still do the tilts. They still get their orders and of the garter and crap like that. But it is just not the paradigm or norm that it was 100 years previous. And so like I don't know. I think that there's something for us who want to be writers to like take and build on that. Like yeah, knights were done to pieces throughout the Middle Ages, yet somehow Spencer just, you know, basically brought it right back from the dead and just tried to make it fresh. But Sidney and further Shakespeare, they had to turn it into something new. Um, and yeah, I think that's what we have to do now is we have to find some new paradigm for detective, and it's not superheroes. Like superheroes is not it's not enough. Um, I have my own spiel about superheroes. I'm so sick of superheroes. Maybe we could do that stream one day. Um, um, basically just a whole spiel about tired of archetypal characters. Bring back humanity. Um, but that's it. I guess we can leave that here. Been an excellent podcast. Thanks for getting me back on rather. Um, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, man. That was. I think if we kept going, we'd probably accidentally break some atoms if we kept like Sydney like.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah. I am like super energized and yeah, so glad that. Yeah, because I would never have I would never have crazy Sydney thoughts unless you kind of brought this all to us or whatever. So I'm glad I was able to kind of like bring this all to a head to a certain degree. And yeah, it's just there's
Yeah.
still more questions. There's still more of like well then what is it? Like okay, we see all the things here. Like then who's really operating? Is Sydney just like is it out of his control or is it totally is in his control? Like who? And then blah, 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 there's still so much more to really unpack and really understand. And so. But I think this is a great start. And once again, I joked at the very beginning of like all these podcasts of like, oh, I want to be a writer, and like I just feel like all the good writers like you could just do Shakespeare off the dome, right? Like so, I feel like I'll go read Shakespeare. Like this seems like the right thing to do, and then it's like. No, like, and now I joke, yeah, maybe you have to be related to them too, but, well, I don't know.
No joke, dude. No, it's really off topic, real quick, but I was listening to a UGK song. UGK is a rap group from the '90s from Houston that's very gangster rap. Pimp C and Bun B. Pimp C is dead now. But Bun B has a line in there, and my roommate was showing me this, but the line is, "You can't kill me because no, how's it go? I'm gonna butcher it. He just straight up quotes Macbeth.
Mm.
Thou can't kill me, or God dang it, what is it? No man born of woman can kill me. Yeah. So I was like, wait, even Bun B's quoting Macbeth? What the fuck? But yes, he's the same artist that says, "Read a book, you illiterate son of a bitch." So shout out H-Town.
Bun B also did a song with, when Pretty Lights came to town years ago. for Houston. Bun B came on the stage and did a song with him.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Uh, um, mixed feelings about Bun B, but shout out to Bun for representing H-Town using Shakespeare and David's alma mater of Rice. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bun B over Travis Scott, right? Any day. So
Yeah,
as the
any day.
Houston representative rapper.
Well, um, that's weird that you brought that up. That's where his name comes from.
Oh, Travis Scott's name comes from Bun B.
Bun B's real name is Travis.
Oh, so it's Travis, or so it's Kid Cudi, obviously, Muscuddy.
Yeah, Kid Cudi Scott.
And then,
Yeah, Bun B is Travis.
Damn. Okay. Crazy. There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
So Travis is just the amalgamation of the two, or not? Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, he's Kid Cudi's actually from up north, but yeah, man. Amazing stream. I think we cracked this at Ego at in Arcadia Ego. I've had to say it 10,000 times and I'm still gonna get it wrong. But yeah, thanks so much for hopping on as well. More work to be done, but holy cow, was this a lot of fun. And yeah, just kind of diving through this, and thanks for hopping in the driver's seat here and there, and yeah, taking over and yeah, joining me for the ride. So everyone, if you're still watching this to the very end for this epic nearly 3-hour podcast about, yeah, dude, I don't think you'll get any more Shakespeare, Sidney related stuff that you'll find here. Dude, we were all over the place. It doesn't matter. And so, yeah, make sure you hit all the like, share, subscribe stuff. Make sure you follow the links down below if you want to support us any other way. We'd super appreciate it. Keep coming back here and cracking open these esoteric secrets for everyone. But otherwise, we will see you all in the next stream. Read it for yourself. Nullius and Verba, everyone, and take care.